You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 497, our coverage of the final two episodes of Season 2 of The Bad Batch, The Summit and Plan 99. And if there ever was pain in Star Wars, we got it in droves in these two episodes. So this will be kind of our breakdown. We've got a lot to discuss, especially since this was the season closer. And we're certainly going to talk about where does this go? Where's this going after this? Because as of today, and though we are just a few days away from Celebration, literally just a few days away from Celebration, there's not a season 3. And the way this thing ended, you better give us a season 3 or there's going to be riot and hell to pay, not to quote Mr. Owen, but Lars. But yeah. And speaking of curmudgeons, no, I'm kidding. People with beards. People with beards. Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. It's been a roller coaster of emotions the last few days.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna lie. I think our tags say it alone. You have a RIP brown eyes. And I'm not on board with that. Hashtag tech lives.
All right. Yep. Usually I'm the more optimistic one, but the tables have turned here tonight. But
yeah, they really have. Hey, before we get started, a bit of sad news that we have to report, of course. Angie Mayhew, the wife of Peter Mayhew, of course, of the Peter Mayhew Foundation, did pass away earlier today. Today is, gosh, what is today? Sunday, April 2nd. So really sad news to hear on that one. Two really amazing people, kind and very generous. So sad that the Star Wars community and really just a generous community overall that we're kind of losing them. So our thoughts and prayers with the family, of course. But yeah, she gets to be with Peter again, which is always a bit of a heartwarming relief there.
Yeah. And she's been in the news recently, too, especially with, I think there was the report. We didn't really cover it. I think it was about a month ago. They had found a bunch of old pictures and things that belonged to Peter Mayhew in a home that apartment he used to rent or live in. And there was a lot of debate about where does this stuff go? I think that guy was trying to sell it and they were trying to give it to the foundation, make it part of charity. So she's been in the news recent here for a lot of other reasons. I had no idea that she was going through health problems, but God bless her. I mean, I don't know her age. I know she was getting up there, but to your point, what a reunion, right? To be back with Chewbacca. So
absolutely. But in brighter news, well, I guess brighter news with this episode, StarWars.com had a couple of interviews with Michelle Ang and Keisha Castle Hughes. So Keisha Castle Hughes plays Emery Carr. Of course, and Michelle Ang, plays Omega, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But two interviews you probably won't want to miss over there at StarWars.com. And again, just talking about the Bad Batch finale on the Emery front, using her natural accent, which is similar, of course, to Michelle Ang's, which was intentional. And a lot of people, called that out, even though I resisted the temptation to jump on that bandwagon. But two good interviews. You can just kind of see their reactions to it, get their feel for maybe some hints as to what's to come. To your point, are we going to get a season 3? All signs kind of point to, yeah, probably. I would hope so. You're right. But yeah, so a couple of interviews you don't want to miss. So StarWars.com, get you those. Just hit the little news and info button and you'll find them right at the top. And then in other news, this is more central to Cantina Cast, of course. We went ahead and put together and kind of formalized our Star Wars Celebration Europe 2023 live stream schedule. So Albert put this best when he brought this up to me. He's like, this is like our Super Bowl, right? And we're not able to be there this year, which is really disappointing for us. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we treat it, I don't know, like we were there. And so we wanted to come up with a schedule that would actually bring you all of the news and everything that we could find in more real time and bring you a bunch of live streams. So we're really excited to announce that we've got quite the schedule already set up. We've got 6 live streams already scheduled, already in the book, starting Friday. So Friday evening, we got a couple on Saturday, a couple on Sunday, and then we'll do another one on Monday night. Lauren's going to be there for most of them, if not all of them, but of course that book panel as well. So lots of great feedback from all 3 of us. You got Ahsoka, you got the studio showcase, which we expect to see maybe some more about Skeleton Crew and all of that. Publishing, Marvel, all the interviews that go on throughout the day. We're going to be on track of all of it. So we'll do a daily recap, of course, in the evenings. but we'll bring you the key moments there earlier in the day on Saturday and Sunday. So we hope you join us on that. If you haven't joined the YouTube channel yet, you just to subscribe. It's free, of course. CantinaCast.com/YouTube is the way to go. Hit the little notification bell. You will get all the notifications, again, twice a day. We're going to be here in Texas still, in the US. So we'll have friendlier times because a lot of this stuff will be happening while we are very early in bed still. So we will be getting up early to try to do all of this. But we really do hope that you'll come out and join us for those. It should be a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, Lauren's got a new video coming this Tuesday for Jedi Novel Archive. It's for Cataclysm, the full review, spoilery review, and all that good stuff. So be sure to go over to that, CantinaCast.com/YouTube. You can find all of her videos, of course, as well over on CantinaCast.com. And if you enjoy what Lauren's doing, I believe her and Stephanie also just had a new release for One Hell of a Fanfic, is where they talk about Star Wars fan fiction. They highlight a new story every month. And so you want to go check them out as well. So friends of the show, of course. And then last but not least, listener Q&A. So we will probably get a lot more of those after Celebration or throughout Celebration, but go ahead and bookmark the link, CantinaCast.com/question. As it happens, send us those questions. We will get a Q&A show scheduled probably here in the next few weeks, just to make sure that we can get all of those in. Thank you for those who have already sent questions to us. I really do appreciate that. And we'll work those in. If you have any follow-ups, please do feel free to submit more than one. That is totally fine as well. And we will dedicate anywhere from half an hour to 6 hours. You know, whatever it takes to get through them all.
Okay.
And remember, if you're well, it's not really untrue.
Sure.
And remember, if you are a Patreon member and you are at the certain tiers, right, you are guaranteed to have your question answered. So as long as you get that in, let me know that you're a Patreon member, which is a little checkbox on there. Let me know who you are. We will make sure that your question is pushed to the top and you are guaranteed a slot in there if Albert makes us cut it to a shorter show. Blame him if you don't like the rules.
Yeah. I'm just a messenger, man.
Yeah, you just work here. You just keep us honest. But hey, speaking of Patreon, special thanks to Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin Jackson, Sharkman Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, and Josh. And of course, Ryan and Kathy from all of our top tiers over at Patreon. If you are curious about that, CantinaCast.com/Patreon is where you can find all of the news, all of the details, all of the info. As well, it has our full schedule for the Celebration live streams as well. So you can find that either over on YouTube or over on Patreon or now. And we'll spam it in the social medias and all that as we get closer.
Yeah, I was going to say, spam it, we'll pin it
this week.
That way it'll be all in your face. You're not going to be able to get away from this.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you can't escape us. Even if you were to try.
We'll be the Boar Gullet of this. You know, this is also Easter weekend.
Yeah, I like where you're headed with it.
Yeah. It
is Easter weekend. Yeah, it's a bit of a... You when we brought that up, you were like, did they really do this over Easter weekend? And sure enough, yes, they did.
So, you know, if you're feeling sacrilegious and want to spend time with folks, we're here for you. We are here to provide the sin that is streaming and talking about Star Wars both on Good Friday and Easter Sunday, because that's what we do. So you're welcome.
But you know what? A lot of places were thinking ahead. They did their Easter egg hunts this weekend instead of next weekend, which is, as far as I'm concerned, they knew Star Wars Celebration was happening, so it was brilliant. You know, these guys, they really think ahead.
Yeah, that's not us. So,
no, we barely think in front of us. So.
Yeah, I mean, we just put the schedule together last night. So, I mean, no, we've been planning.
That's
this
not true. We've been working this for a while.
We have been. This is a lot. Are you sure about this? No, I'm kidding. No, we are going to have a lot of content coming up, and hopefully, there's some stuff to talk about. Like, we don't know. I mean, we've kind of highlighted the things that we expect they're going to be, you know, worthy of discussion. But hopefully, we get some surprises, especially in the way of a movie, special announcements of new television series. This is the place that it's going to happen, right? If it's going to happen anywhere else, it's going to be here at Star Wars Celebration in front of thousands and thousands of people. It's a big deal because we're back at Europe. It's been a very long time since we've been at Europe. And I know we've got a lot of listeners in the UK. And so definitely want to hear from you guys on social media. We'll be watching like hawks early morning for what you guys are posting and talking about. So we may even try to hijack you onto a show or something, or at least get your feedback or read your comments online here. So definitely want this to be a very engaging kind of a weekend of podcasting and Star Wars discussion. So looking forward to it. And like I said, Jonesy's going to be here. I've already got the space cleared out. We got to figure out lighting and power, because I'm pretty sure we're going to blow fuses with this much equipment in here, but we'll make it work. And I got a fan, because it's going to be like a 7th grade gym locker with you and I in here with all this podcast equipment. So I'm sorry, 7th grade boys gym locker, to be clear. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to do all this. What else we got? We got anything else before we jump into the breakdown here?
I think that's bad. You know, it's hard to believe we have May the 4th just around the corner as well. So
Oh,
stay
we've got
tuned
something
for
planned
some,
for that, by the way.
yeah, stay tuned for some news on that one developing.
Oh, that's really developing.
All
Okay.
sorts of excitement going on around here, huh?
All right. Well, let's talk about these 2 episodes, and we're not. I mean, we'll do a break. I
Yeah.
mean, we'll talk about both of them, right? But
Let's get depressed. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, go ahead, get your box of Kleenex or tissue out, and let's just cry it out, man. So I want you to start because I know you've had a lot to talk about, and the only thing I'll say very, very quickly is I watched it again today. I mean, I've watched it a few times already, but I hadn't watched it really all day. Well, I didn't watch it all day today until the very end of the day. And I got really choked up. I don't know if I'm just super tired because I've been running around all day with myself, but it hit me pretty hard, especially the line of when have we ever taken orders? Just the way he's not even looking up and he's like nodding his head like he's accepted his fate. Ugh, that was murderous. So I'll leave it there, but tell me what you're thinking here.
Wow. Yeah. Tough episode. I mean, it was funny. Like when I originally watched it, the first few times, it was the tech moments really got to me. But then as I like in those really final viewings for me, I had another kind of emotional moment, like towards the end though, with Omega, with Wrecker carrying her, and with just the emotions of her trying to protect Hunter and Wrecker and save them, and some of the conversations that happened later with her and Crosshair. It was like all those things just kind of snowballed.
Yeah.
And those snuck up on me. I really wasn't expecting some of that, but I finally had like this kind of moment of relief a little bit. While it's still very foreboding of where Omega is at this point, knowing that Crosshair is there, a little unsure about what Emery's role in all of this is, but there is someone there as well. And then now let's say there's still this little glimmer of hope, which is I think is always really important about Star Wars. Even when you leave on those really dark moments, Empire Strikes Back was, for all intents and purposes, like the bottom has fallen out, right? And at the very end, though, they give you just that glimmer of hope, like, hey, we will still find a way. We will still rescue Han. We'll turn this whole thing around.
Yeah, yeah.
And so while it wasn't as overt as that, as Empire Strikes Back in these episodes, it was still there if you want to look for it.
I think
So I looked
Hunter,
for
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but Hunter's line was probably the biggest line, was the biggest
Oh, it's
hopeful thing, right?
Very powerful.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry.
That was very powerful. I mean, yeah, and exactly. It's he's saying he will basically go to the ends of the earth.
The galaxy.
That is our mission
Mhm.
now. It's not saving brothers, Echo. It's not whatever else. It's no. And Hemlock's his comment about he had no idea that clones were so paternal, and while it was very tongue in cheek and very sarcasm laden, yeah, he's super paternal, and we love it, right? I mean, this was a whole season 1 arc for Hunter, right?
Mhm.
And this season was so much about him giving her more flexibility, giving her like trusting her more, trusting Omega more, giving her that opportunity to grow and expand and experience things, and let go, in a finger quote kind of way. And now he's got to, he's still got to be Papa Bear though, And so I just thought, I'm not really giving a lot of specifics. We'll go through all the details, of course, tonight,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
those were really key moments for me that I really felt like I loved, but also needed to have in some way, and it needed to kind of go find in some of those more emotional moments where otherwise you're just like, man, this is just sad. Like, I don't know what to do. There's no hope. It's just hopeless. There's nothing how are they going to find Tantus? It didn't go back to Tantus. We were wrong. This sucks, Oh, wait, sorry. That part was a little over the top.
Yeah.
But it was just very much like, how the heck are they going to go find Tantus now? They're back at ground zero, and then that, what Trandoshan of a bartender.
Sid?
Yeah.
She whose name shall not be. Yeah. I got some thoughts on her.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts too. And it's actually probably a little redeeming for her. Maybe not redeeming is probably not the right word, but there's some, her back may have been in a bit of a corner, even though they set her up to be a certain way. So we'll talk a little bit about that one too. Maybe I'll give Sid an out.
Well, she got paid though, so. But yeah,
she did get paid, but yeah,
there's some things that so there's some things that I would say were done visually with her character that I think. Now, I'm not saying she's going to be redeemed, and with that character in particular, I'm like, if they made her the bad person and they never came back and gave her a redemption arc, or we never revisited her, I'd be totally fine. At the same time, there were moments, especially with her interactions with Omega and some of the sweeter moments that we saw, although they seemed kind of in self-interested moments with her. There was things that they did visually with the character that I thought, okay, there's more to it's not as black and white, right? It's more nuanced, it's more complex. Could she be worthy of a redemption? I guess I could go either way, but to your point, we'll get into that because there's some things that I do want to talk about there. On the topic of Tech's death, oh boy, they did a really good job this season. As much as I would say the first, I don't know, 12 episodes were kind of just there for me. I mean, they were good episodes, and I said that consistently. This is a good episode. They weren't really kind of like drive the story forward. There was a lot of character building and relationship building going on, and all that was really good. At the end of the day, though, when you look back, we talked a lot about Tech, right? We talked a lot about how Tech had come around. This was really kind of his season, and maybe that should have been the first sign that this was going to happen. I think in these two episodes, there were some signs, there were some things he said, some things that he didn't do that were telltale signs that, okay, this is probably not going to go well for him, right? I didn't think he was going to die, but there was going to be some loss. And we had talked about this, right? That Pabu storyline and finally showing the characters everything they could possibly ever want was the best way that you do storytelling, because then you take all that away from them, right? The loss is greater. I think that's why so many of us are feeling so hard about Tech's death, because of all of the clones, he finally got the one thing that, you wouldn't expect a clone to possibly even be thinking about, which is love. And we'll get to that Fee moment too, because there was some, the awkwardness of that and what was probably going through his head during that time. But the point is, they did such a good job this season of giving us so much background on Tech, building that character up, making us very, very vested in his character and knowing who he is, that worked really well for the death itself. It feels like, we've gotten that from him. We've got it from Crosshair. Omega has been a consistent in both seasons, of course, because she kind of is the main person, even though it's the Bad Batch. She's part of the Bad Batch. So I would expect if we do get a season 3, the only person that's really left is somebody like Hunter. So maybe Hunter's, that's going to be his season where he's going to be, Mr. Papa Bear going after his girl, or he goes, taking Liam Neeson style, or Mel Gibson, give me back my daughter. I mean, I'd love to see that kind of an angle, like see him a little bit darker and a little bit twisted, because he's just kind of been there on the surface for the better part of 2 seasons now. The other
payback.
Exactly. What was more tragic, I think, is that for the first time, Tech, you think back to, he's so analytical, right? He thinks a million different things and comes up with the most logical, analytical decision there is. And it was in the first episode, this was his idea. Like, Hunter was against this at the very beginning. He's like, no, it's too dangerous. We can't go in there and do all of this. He's the first one that steps up and says, we have to, he's one of our brothers, right? That to me shows a lot of growth for Tech, because I don't know that he would have made that decision last season or even just a few episodes ago, right? That doesn't,
good point.
The odds, all right, or just the risk value or risk factor doesn't seem like he'd weigh in on that and be like, yeah, let's go through with this. So that does show that, he has developed, he's gotten to a point now where he's putting that to the side. He's tapping more into the emotional, more into that social aspect that he's never really had. So that shows development. So that in itself makes this a lot more tragic for him to pass. So, by the way, we're going to spoil this episode. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it, then no, I'm kidding. Okay, so quickly, my other quick thoughts here. The music, freaking phenomenal again.
Really good.
I mean, really good stuff. Oh my God, especially what was I wrote it in my notes, but it was right after Omega had been captured. I think I'll come back to it in a little bit, but there were just some really good stuff from Kevin Kiner that. Again, I mean, we shouldn't expect anything less from him at this point, but
it's more shades of like Clone Wars finale of Ahsoka walking off and Rebels finale.
Yep.
It just, his ability to score those types of scenes is just unreal.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Yep. There was, it was a very defining piece of music, a piece that's always going to be synonymous with what was going on there. Similar to, the season finale of season 2 of Rebels, or like you said, the last episode of the Clone Wars, right? There's just these iconic pieces that he's created that resonate with us and they bring back these memories. This is one of them for me. But throughout this entire episode, it was really good. I enjoyed Saul Guerrero coming back.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
I didn't either. And, and it's like, I know a lot of people are blaming Saul Guerrero, and I have the question at the very end of, is this his fault, right? People are kind of blaming him for Tech's death because I mean, I think I can see it both ways, but we'll get into that a little bit more. He continues to be that monkey wrench, the wild factor, the X factor in all of Star Wars. And so love him or hate him, you're going to get more of him. So kind of nice to see that. Here's one thing I'd say I didn't like, but disappointing that we didn't get Crosshair, like any kind of finality with that. And I get
No resolution to him.
no
at all
resolution.
still.
I mean, he's carrying over into season 3. I would imagine he's going to. So yeah, I guess more to come on that. But
I think that sets him up for more involvement in season 3, especially being at Tantus with Omega
yeah,
and that direct connection. So I would expect that we would see a lot more Crosshair, but I agree. It was really hard not to have any kind of movement, like true movement on that one, or resolution. We had movement throughout the season, for a handful of episodes, but to not have any finality or even not really feel like what the direction, him to be basically catatonic on the table, that was a little disappointing. I mean, we just had higher expectations, I think, of that. But these episodes had a lot crammed into them.
Yeah.
So trying to do more of it was maybe a bit unrealistic at that point.
yeah.
Maybe to your point about how the season was structured, though, too, just overall.
Right. Well, and it felt like we were like, that's what I'm really questioning. And I don't know that I've got complete thoughts around this yet. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But where was, when we started the season and even throughout it, I was expecting that the Crosshair was kind of the main theme. We were going to get some background on the cloning, and that was kind of it. We kind of poo-pooed on the idea that Emery was related, not because of the idea itself. It was that if they were going to do this, why would they do it in this, 2 or the last 3-4 episodes? That was my thing, is it's too late. Why would you introduce that now? And we had all these other things to kind of wrap up. And I guess the way they did it makes sense, because if you're going to do that, then fine, throw it at the very end, leave it as the big cliffhanger, and we don't need to worry about it until next year or 2 years from now. I go, okay, that's fine. That makes sense. My head was more around no, you don't introduce that in, the third to the last episode when you've got no time to wrap up all the other stuff that we were, trying to get through here. So I do have a question. I guess where I was going is, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the direction of the season. Where were they trying to go, and how that's going to play into it? Obviously, there's a bigger picture here, and it's not just a 1-act or a 2-act. This is a 3-act play. I was kind of also looking at this too. Like, season 1 feels very New Hope-ish. Season 2 feels very Empire. And because we're, like you said earlier in the your opening comments, we've kind of bottomed out at this point, right? I mean, all hope seems lost, with the exception of a couple things that Hunter says and things that we know possibly could still happen and turn this thing around. But I would expect season 3 to kind of be the Return of the Jedi, Return of the Clones, or whatever you want to call it. That'd be kind of poetic, right? To kind of end it on 3 seasons. I don't know that there's
Revenge of the Clones.
Revenge of the Clones. Maybe that would be a good way to kind of wrap the series up, knowing that we've only got, or the series up with 3 seasons. And then if they want to branch off, Echo and Rex and all that, they've got plenty of runway to do all that. We'll talk about Sid a little bit later. I guess that's pretty much it for me. I really enjoyed both episodes, though. I mean, I thought this was like the last 4 episodes and the Crosshair episodes were cream of the crop and really stood out. The rest of the season may be forgettable. I mean, it's still fresh in my head, so I can't really say it's going to be forgettable, but maybe that may change over the course of the next year. I don't know that I'm going to be looking back on some of these episodes and be thinking about specific moments. Pabu is the only other thing that really kind of sticks out, because I imagine that's still where they're going to retire at some point, should they get through all of this. And I don't even know where that's going now. So
yeah, they weren't really significant milestone type of episodes, even though they were all very enjoyable. So I can understand kind of your perspective on that one. That does make sense.
All right, well, let's get into this. The first one, The Summit, directed by Nate Villanueva, Matt Miknovitz. He was the writer and the story editor. He was the story editor for the Plan 99 as well. We start on Pabu, right? I was like, oh, okay, we're back.
Beautiful establishing shot.
Yeah.
By the way.
But when they did the black fade in from black. That's always scary. I hate when they do that. I'm like, oh crap, here we go. What's happening? This is not going to go good. They start off the freaking episode like that.
Yeah, it's like a finale type of thing, though, too. They always do a little spin on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're talking about the Advanced Science Division, that they really don't have a lot on Hemlock. I don't think we covered this in the last episode. It was in the show notes, and I skipped over it, and I realized I did afterwards. But we failed to mention that this guy Hemlock was apparently part of the Republic, and then he was kind of a carryover. So he's been around for a while, but even still, doesn't look like there's a whole lot of background on him. So maybe the Empire wiped all that out. Maybe he just was doing clandestine stuff for the Republic as well. I didn't kind of peg him as that, but
Yeah, they had said that he was arrested, I think, in the Republic, the Galactic Republic, for unorthodox experiments, things that weren't supported, things that were probably just not cool, right? And we see that with the toxin last episode as well, right? When he's able to inhale it, clearly he's doing things that are not on the up and up.
yeah,
And so, but yeah, those are ripe opportunities for Galactic Empire to then step in and say, hey, we kind of like your style.
right.
So it's not surprising that record is, while maybe not expunged, it's very limited in what they can actually go and find. But is definitely flags and a lack of understanding about what it is he actually knows and what his interests are and what his specialties are. Again, just kind of adds to the mystery of the character a little bit for us too.
Yeah. And they had the plan, again, at least in this first episode, was let's go after Crosshair. And we're going to do this by planting some kind of a tracking device on Hemlock's ship. They knew he was going to be meeting at a summit, right, with wherever that was going to be on Iradu.
Yeah, Iriadu, right?
Yeah, and this is where I have it in the notes, but this is where Tech steps up and says, "No, we got to do this. He's our brother," which is again just gutting that he would be the one that steps up, and everyone, of course, agrees that this is the right thing to do.
Hey, can we pause here for a second? Because I had a question. So we had, coming into this episode, we were like, hey, all signs lead to Tantus, right?
Yeah.
We're heading that direction. When we were going to Iriadu, did you automatically jump like, okay, we are not going to Tantus over these 2 episodes, or was that still a hope? And then what level of disappointment when we didn't go there, as far as a Bad Batch, going there,
Mm-hmm.
did you have with that? Maybe just briefly on just where you're coming from and what was developing as you were starting to hear this.
I had that sinking moment of crap. We're not going to Tantus at the end of this episode because they were stuck on cable cars and like in the middle of nowhere. And I'm thinking they're cutting now and we've got 20 minutes left. Where are we going? I mean, at first I was like, no, maybe this is going to be a quick, slam bam, thank you, ma'am, 5-minute segment, 10-minute segment. And then the latter part is on the way to Tantus and they show up there. We end there. Plan 99 is everything that happens in Tantus. That was my thinking. When it ended with the car stopping, I was like, oh, okay, what is going on here? Like, we're never going to get to, we're not going to get to Crosshair. There's no way. There's no time. So yeah, yes and no, I guess. It just depends on, it was the timing for me more than anything.
Yeah, I started having the feeling almost immediately whenever we were going to Iriadu. I was like, okay, there's still some hope, but it was already starting to wane. And then by the time I got there and they started to see the irregularities of what something was going on, I was like, there's no chance we're going. It's like, this is all happening here. It's going to be, I didn't really expect to go back to Ord Mantell, but it makes sense why we did, right, with AZ. But it was starting to develop pretty quickly early on. That I was like, man, we're not going to Tantus, and it was a little bit disappointing when we got back there. Like Omega did at the very least, so we got some redemption there from that aspect. But yeah, it again kind of further to our intro thoughts. It was just a little surprising, and I don't know. But then again, it's supposed to be a hard to find place. This is why I had to reconcile a little bit with myself too. It's supposed to be a hard to find place. It's not supposed to be something that our team can just go and figure out, as smart as Tech is and as smart as, how much info Echo and Rex might have.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that we have to work really hard to get there and make that part of the journey. But now it's probably going to feel like it's all of season 3 journey. And so we've got to sit through another 12 plus episodes of trying to figure out what is Tantus.
I'm going to need you to walk me off the ledge on the decision to go back to Ord Mantell when we get there. Okay.
Okay.
Because I am going to get on a soapbox, and that was one of the stupidest decisions for me. But maybe I'm missing
It all makes
something.
sense. It all makes sense to me.
Okay.
So
Good. Well, then I'll need your sense. There's a quick question in the chat. Ronald White says, "Is there a link between cloning the Bad Batch with the intentions of Moff Gideon in the Mandalorian?" I'm on board. Like, there's no question in my mind, at least right now, until they say something different. I think they've been painting and connecting these two since season 2 of the Mandalorian and season 1 of the Bad Batch. So. Yeah.
Yep. It seems like it's a continuation of the same type of program, if not the specific Emperor program.
Yeah. And there's a comment that Hemlock makes a little bit later when they get to the summit where I think it just kind of cauterizes that for me in my head. Okay. Let's talk about the long goodbye or the awkward goodbye between Fee and Tech.
This was super awkward.
It was awkward, and it was uncharacteristic of him because if you think back to
It was actually kind of perfectly awkward in that regard, but yeah.
it was okay. Not. I'm glad you said that because this was definitely in character for Tech. As even though it did seem awkward because of how he was reacting to. I mean, there was when Fee was going to walk away to go put whatever it was back in the museum or whatever it was, the artifact. He like turned to like he was concerned about her or was worried that she's leaving. That's a far cry from this, and I think it's well within his character. I think it's he's still he's struggling with trying to make sense of his feelings. What does this mean? It's obvious she likes him, so I mean he's probably never he's never been. I'll just go ahead and say it. He's never been in that position before, right? And so for me, it makes total sense that he would be awkwardly social about his interaction with her, even though he does feel something for her. And I think she could pick up on that. And I think she was kind of pushing him a little bit, trying to kind of come out of that shell. He didn't want to break. A lot of it too is probably him thinking about the mission ahead. The risk that was involved, like you said, or like I said earlier, he analyzed the risk. He knows this is super risky. He knows the stakes are going to be super high. So does he want to go through the whole thing about, oh, this may be my last goodbye. I may never see you again. He's not there yet, right? It's much easier for him to revert back, regress into just shutting down. Yep, I'm leaving. And, maybe I'll see you later. Maybe I'll see you won't. Maybe I won't, but I'm not going to give you to my feelings here in this moment because I'm not ready for that.
Well, and I don't think the Bad Batch ever considered not coming back from a mission. You see this with Omega as well. Like, it's a covert mission.
Mm-hmm.
She's excited. It's fun, right? The
Sure.
missions, while they've been challenging, they've had things happen. They always turn out in the end, right? Even if they don't come away with the goods, they at least survive, and I don't know, it's exciting for her.
Right.
And so I think with Tech, it's not a consideration that he's not ever going to come back. But I'm with you on one respect, though, is I think he was just focused on the mission, focused on preparation. I don't understand. What do you mean I have to go and say goodbye? Like it suggests, it's a little bit of a left turn from them, clicking cups over dinner and sharing a few looks and glances. But it's clear that the relationship hasn't really developed all that far in the time since they first got to Pabu. It's probably developed in incremental ways, in very small ways, but it's not like they've been super intimate in any kind of way, right? It seems like they are just still, it's a very long road for Tech, I think, in order to get to that place, right? So it just doesn't ever occur to him, which I think is perfect for the character. But I'm with you. It was a little disappointing based on what we had. It seemed like he was coming around, or at least being open to some things. But again, whenever you have a mission, old habits, you just kind of click right back into just prep mode, right? And why would I need to go do this? It's a secret mission.
Yeah.
If I tell you about it, it's not secret.
Yep. And then her last words to him, see you around, brown eyes. Probably never.
Well, and yeah, I liked her little comment. Don't go around, two friends when they're talking, they're having a conversation. I mean, you could just like see the finger quotes. She's just wanting to slap him over the head, but also don't go. What was the comment? Don't go talking to any pirates or smugglers. And he's like, well, that's not a problem. They're not going to be on this mission.
Right. So literal.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Of course, I also wanted him just to respond, well, don't get all mushy on me, sweetheart.
Right. Throw right back at her. Yeah. Go a little Han Solo on her. Okay. Well, sad moment and forever remembered. They jump into hyperspace in the Marauder, and then they land outside the sensors. They kind of cut back and forth. So I just want to talk about this, and then we'll get into all the Iriadu stuff. And they get past there. They land they're about to land, and of course they get the trope, the Jedi trope of we have old codes, and that was all good stuff. I mean, that's Star Wars. It's been done a million times already.
Right.
Expected. So the codes work. They land there, and then we get the talk about this is a precision kind of place or whatever, a precision mission.
Only 30 seconds by the time he gets up there and disables it before they have to make their move. Yeah.
And this is like the second time now where he's calculated the exact time. There was that other episode where it was like 60 seconds they had for Hunter to scale down the inside of the erupting volcano or whatever it was. Right.
Right.
But I did chuckle when they all turned at Wrecker, and he's like, what? I can handle it, because he is kind of the bull in the China shop for the most part.
Right.
Yeah. They get the sensor disrupted, attached to cables, they get in, and so far, everything seems to be going really well. So what a good time to cut over to the summit, which is kind of like this meeting of the minds thing, right? Where they're bringing everybody in.
There's a love fest to Rogue One in this room, huh?
Yeah, there was. And honestly, I didn't like it. Didn't look like Krennic to me because I first thought I was like, oh, it's Krennic because the first shot is kind of further away, and then when they got close up to him, and this is not feedback, and I don't really care. It's Krennic, and so be it, right? But it didn't look exactly like Krennic to me, but okay, whatever.
Yeah, first time we've seen him animated, I believe. So it was.
Yeah.
It's always that first time. Sometimes it's always obvious.
Yeah. And this is similar to, not to wax World War II history, but there was a summit that was held by Hitler and a number of people like in 1942. So just before they really started turning the ratchet on the Jews. And they had a summit at that time, and I forget what it was called. It's got a German name, of course. The purpose of that meeting during World War II was for them to talk about how to finally get rid of the Jews, right? Like that was the whole plan of that summit. And if you think about it, it's kind of similar to this. Like it was kind of the meeting of the minds, right? The highest people, at least at that time, coming together. And this wasn't necessarily about the Jews; it was about the clones. Like, what do we do with the clones? How do we get rid of them? I'm sure there were other things on the table at the same time, but I do like the fact that if it wasn't, I like to think it was intentional, and they were kind of echoing some of what we experienced in our own world history too. 'Cause I always love that stuff, especially when we get to talk about World War II and the empires involved because they're, evil people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Tarkin, says they need to bring the galaxy together to deter the dissent and rampant self-interest. And they talk about that advanced science division. I guess I had a question about whether the advanced is the advanced science division really their only purpose, and based on what Hemlock is talking about, is it just to create like obedient people? That was the first time I picked this up. Like I've been so hyper focused on building clones for Palpatine and building force sensitive clones, which is something that I think that's what Nalase was talking about at the very end. Like he can't do it. He wants it, but he can't do it kind of thing. But when he was talking about the Republic and talking about the people, it almost sounded like he was trying to like genetically create loyal servants to the Republic, like well beyond anything. The scope of this was much more,
right.
It was larger.
Through their advanced technology and molecular alteration. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had a little diagram at the bottom. They had little people, and you would see about every third person would have a red, a red shape, a red person. Yeah. So about every 3 to 5. So you would start to see kind of the idea of that plan. I don't know. It's an interesting concept though, that they were looking at this in a broader term. They were looking at this more from the idea of creating loyal subjects and subjugating them. And so it's almost like taking the clone program with the chips and take it to that next step, that next stage, but doing it on a molecular level rather than mechanical, right? Because that was reasonably successful, actually pretty well successful, but they've still exerted individuality, right? Rather than this groupthink methodology or just following blind orders and brainwashing, potentially an entire population, or at least the troublesome parts of the population, I suppose. But yeah, it was a unique, I don't know if that's the only application of the advanced science division. It seems like when you have a whole division, you're probably working on a bunch of things. And again, we have that aspect of things, but we also have the emperor's motives as well.
Yeah.
And so how much are they, intertwined, or how much are they, how much crossover is there? And that one seems like there's less so, right? Because the emperor, I'm with you. I think all signs still point to, we are trying to create a new vessel for the emperor, or he is trying to create offspring, right? Which we know from Shadow of the Sith and some of those stories as well about, with Rey's story eventually.
Yeah.
So those two angles seem very embedded in that one, whereas this other one is solving a problem that they have right now and they need to go forward. And hey, when you request a lot of fat cash, like they have, when you get the big budget, so comes the scrutiny and hey, when is this going to be done and all that good stuff. So all of the bureaucracy kind of comes into effect there too. Again, the whole money conversation in Star Wars is still a little bit interesting to me. Budgets and
right,
all that.
Well, and this is consistent because in Rebels, remember it was Tarkin who was pushing both Thrawn and Krennic, right, for their plans, right? They were competing. The TIE Defender versus the Project Stardust, which came up in this episode, which was kind of a cool.
And this was I brought this as Rogue One because you're on Iriadu, which was in Rogue One, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have Ramadi, who's a general. He was in Rogue One. You have, oh gosh, what else did you have there from Rogue One?
Krennic?
You had Krennic, of course, Orson Krennic for Project Stardust. I think who was the other officer that was there though? He was more from Clone Wars though. What, Coburn, I believe was the other
Oh,
one.
was him? I didn't realize that was him.
Yeah, so Coburn was there. Also, Ben Mendelsohn did the voice for Krennic, by the way. I know it was very short, but Ben Mendelsohn, the actual actor that played Orson Krennic, did the voice as well. So that was kind of cool that they brought him in. It's
Yeah.
real blink and you miss it though. You really can't even tell because the line was so cut so short.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. Yeah, you could hear it. It didn't. It sounded like Krennic to me. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. I didn't get a chance to look at the credits, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. And then of course Saw Gerrera and some other things too. So there were a lot of Rogue One elements in this episode, which was kind of
Yeah,
cool
no,
to
good point on
be able to
Saw
see so
Gerrera,
much
yeah.
love there.
Yeah, it's kind of a reminder that we're not that far away from the true evil galactic empire, that we see in Rogue One or knew about during the Dark Times. The line, by the way, so the quote was an enlightened society. So when he said society, to me, that's broader than just the clones, right?
Society.
Exactly.
And that echoing the Emperor's speech, right?
Yeah, in the Senate.
Yep.
So yeah, it seems like he's got bigger plans. Hemlock does, which is great. Like we need even people in the world. They did talk about clones being Imperial property again. They continue to hit that and hammer that home pretty hard. He says they don't need to consent.
Yeah. How did you feel about that? You had it was kind of cool seeing the other officers. Like I served with the clones and they were loyal. They did so much for us. It was very much that we served in the trenches and then, Tarkin coming back over. Well, I did too. They had too much of a mind of their own.
Yeah, I mean he's an absolute egomaniac and a fascist leader, and that's why him and Vader got along really well, or him and the Emperor got along really well.
Right.
So all that was good. They talked to kind of recap. Basically, there was I forget who it was. It was talking about the Senate, right? Get worried that the Senate was going to hear about this, and they didn't want to have an uprising here of them as well. And then they mentioned that some of them were starting to rebel. The clones were starting to kind of fight back and push back.
Tarkin took a bit of offense to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then we end that whole scene with, so what's the update on Project Stardust? And you're like, wink, wink, nod, nod. So all that was good. Okay, so let's get back to the Bad Batch, and they're in the process now of trying to figure out which of these 8 looking identical, no marking shuttles could be Hemlocks. And so they get the idea of, okay, we'll get the ship manifest. We got to get up there, get that. Then we can figure out which one is theirs. So Echo and Hunter head up there to get the manifest. And then Omega gets kind of in this situation where she's sneaking around and gets kind of pinned down, I guess, for lack of a better term, because she can't get out. And so Echo then starts that whole crane malfunction. There's not really a lot to talk about here. I mean, it's just they're kind of rolling with the punches, 1 step back and then 2 steps forward kind of thing as they're trying to get all this. But
right, but they start to see anomalies, like Attack and Echo start to see anomalies of what is going on. Like there's just there's too many irregularities of what's going on with different camera systems coming offline. That seems to be, they didn't really suggest there was a pattern, but it definitely felt like it was not something that you would typically have, more so than just a normal system failure. And then when they go to a certain sector and the entire sector is down, red flags all over the place. Like, no, we have even text like, we got to get out of here. Like game over.
Right.
Yeah, something's not right. And then they find the explosive, of course, and it's like, oh yeah, something's very not right.
There were a lot of people online, social media, and I spend most of my time in the Twitterverse, but online that were saying that they saw this coming. Like as soon as they saw things were happening, that Saw Gerrera wasn't. I feel like I like to think I'm usually in on that stuff, but this one, I was not thinking Saw Gerrera, and I was pleasantly surprised when it turned out to be. But I was thinking, oh man, there must be their budget constraints or bad wiring, or gee, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I felt like an idiot when I started seeing everybody talk about they called it, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah.
That hat has been working its wonders on you because you're thinking like an Imperial
right.
now.
Yeah, Imperial sympathizer is who I am.
Yeah, something was wrong. I just couldn't quite put my finger on what it would be, and then it was Saw Gerrera's. Like, oh God, of course it's Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, right. When I saw it, then I'm like, it makes sense. But I wasn't one of the ones that was going, oh, it's Saw Gerrera. There's no doubt in my mind, on first watch. But kudos to those people that did. So yeah, they find the explosive, then Saw Gerrera shows up. And of course, Saw Gerrera is only there to kill people. Like he's got like no mission. He knows they're very high, powerful people that are going to be here. Probably got that as an intel thing. And he's going to blow up a bunch of stuff. And if he gets them, cool. If he doesn't, that's just as good. Like to him, this is that X factor in all of this stuff, and why people like Luthen And, even like Mon Mothma, when we get to Rogue One, they're so like done with Saw Gerrera, because this is going to be a pattern that continues to repeat itself, where he becomes more and more maniacal or crazy, I guess I would say, right? He just starts this downward spiral, and he's doing nothing but in his own self-interest, and it turns really into he's more of a risk and liability, even though he's technically on the same side. I love that dynamic of the character, but I hate the fact that I do kind of blame him for Tech's death, because honestly, had those explosions not gone off, they would have gotten out of there. They would have put the plant on there. They would have been able to track Hemlock, and we would have had a very different storyline. But because this guy has something up his, Tech, the rail, the electrical system was shot, and that all led to Tech's death. That seems very simple and black and white, but that's where I am.
It just lacks
What about you?
strategic thinking, right? Or the longer game. And Tech was trying to tell him, like, look, it's a better move for us to figure out where they are going. There's something else going on. We need to get as much intel as possible. You are completely limiting that if you take out these top officials. It makes sense in a very short term thinking that you have really dealt a blow to the Empire. But by this point, the Empire is expanding so quickly with their ability and their technology. They've got the things that they are wanting to put in place. They have been putting in place over still a small period of time, but they're rapidly growing and increasing those abilities. So you both understand the urgency of Saw Gerrera, of why he would want to do this, but also Tech's comments of, like, I believe it was Tech, they're just going to backfill him. Like, yeah, it would be a huge loss for Tarkin, especially, right? And even maybe a Hemlock, and maybe even a Krennic. But at the same time, there will be somebody else to step in and fill that role, and you might set them back for a time, but you've really not made any true gains. You've just delayed a bit of the inevitable. Now,
yeah,
Saw Gerrera may have been more effective had the Bad Batch not been there. On the other side of the coin, he might have been successful of taking them out if they would have had more time to plant the rest of their explosives, if they had to finish early because they were rushed and had to jump out prematurely as well. So just to be devil's advocate, you look on the other side of the fence, he might have had a more effective overall, tactical plan than what got realized on the screen.
Qui-Gon Jay just chimed in. I want to catch this real quick. He's talking about Tech's death. He says, "Sorry, I'm late, guys. No body, no death. But like the Grand Inquisitor said, there are some fates worse than death." Alluding, I guess, I'm assuming that he's alluding to Tech being alive and in the hands of the Empire. Yeah, Jonesy's throwing up gang signs, which I think translate into, "Yep, I'm with you, brother." Okay, hashtag. Oh, okay, I was way off on that one. So yeah, we'll get to more on whether or not he's alive or dead. He's dead.
If Echo can live, so can Tech.
That's true. If Maul can live, anybody can live. But there's reasons why he needs to stay dead, in my opinion. As much as I hate it. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, that son of a bee.
Saw Gerrera.
Saw Gerrera.
Son of a Gerrera.
Short face. Son of a Gerrera. That's a good one. I think I'm going to start using that one.
Did you think real long and hard about who the female voice was, though? For the other stormtrooper that got shot and she was wounded?
Oh, yeah, I did. Like, I was expecting it to be somebody we knew. It's not Jyn Erso.
Looked way too old. The voice just wasn't quite there, but I'd listened to it a bunch of times just to try to make sure.
I mean, that would be the first thing that came to mind, but he ran around with a number of other female rebels as well, so it could have been any one of them.
Probably would have still been a bit young at this age anyway, because this is still about 10 years before Rogue One. But probably longer than that, actually.
Yeah, so she would have been, so she was still with him, but like running around and being planted at different places, and almost kind of like Omega, or she was being sidelined until she finally got her first gig and all that. But again, it's all covered in the book, Rebel Rising. Let's see, where are we? Yeah, and like you said, it's a Hydra, right? I mean, like, you're gonna kill these officers, and they're gonna just replace them, which was what Tech was saying, right? The only true way to get rid of this, and we saw this in Jedi, was to eventually kill the heart, right? Kill the main snake or whatever, and that was Palpatine. So yeah, he's just buying time, and he's got Saw Gerrera is really just. I mean, I get where he's coming from. I mean, there's certainly strategy, at least right now, but by the time we get to Rogue One, it's just about bloodshed. He's purely a terrorist at that point. And a lot of it is because he's resigned himself that he can't make a difference. He knows he can't make a difference. The Rebel Alliance might be able to, right? Should that get started, but he's not there to really make a difference. He's just there to, at that point, just to be a pain in their side, to draw blood, let them know he's there kind of thing.
You kind of get it though, right? I mean, when you have something that just seems insurmountable, you feel like you got to do something, and there's no organization whatsoever. Like they have those little insurgent pockets, but there's no one really able to do any significant damage to the empire.
Because they're
And yet
splintered, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the alliance. But sorry, yeah.
well, no, yeah, right. But it's also very early as well, and they don't even know that one another really exists.
Yes.
They just kind of
Yeah.
pick up strays along the way, effectively. And so, yeah, they're very splintered, but they just don't know any of it is even. I think he's still trying to figure out what's even possible, right? And
Mhm.
so, when we eventually get to more of a structured alliance and structured combat type of fleet, right? Army, whatever you want to call it, Navy, then it starts to be more of a conflict in that way. But I think Saw Gerrera at this point, he's still very early, so he's able just to say, "Look, I'm trying to do as much early on as possible. So hopefully we can make that damage now. So maybe in his mind, we can make a difference now and stop it before it gets out of control, even though he realistically probably fully understands that it's well beyond what he's able to do, but no one else is doing anything. So he feels like he's got that virtue side of it too, right? That, well, no one else is, but at least I can say I tried and did something,
Mhm.
for the greater good, right?
Yep. Okay, so we get to at this point. This is the mission's pretty much compromised, right? I mean, the bombs are going off. There's a lot of stuff that's happening here. There's a lot of crossfire. They're shooting stuff. They're trying to get out of there, and all this is good stuff. The big takeaways here is I like the fact that they lock down. It's almost like a safe room. They lock down that summit room. They didn't seem very concerned, right? And that's probably on par and in character for Tarkin, because they just told him he was about to blow up in episode 4, and he was like, "Meh, no big deal. It's not gonna
Yeah. He
happen."
just got pissed.
Yeah. Oh, he was seething.
They animated his nostrils flaring.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, he was seething there at the very, very end of it all. Yeah, so Saw Gerrera makes it away. He gets in his ship. He takes off. There's people dying left and right for his group. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, once when he hits those explosions, right, and everything blows up, and this is what ultimately leads to the electrical malfunction that disables the cable cars that the Bad Batch were in,
Yeah, strand them, yeah.
and strands them right there at the very end. I'm trying to remember now if that, and I've seen this, I saw it mostly on Friday and Saturday, but it ended with the second cable car already kind of hanging, right? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Yeah, no, it's in the next episode, but yeah, it's just they're disabled at that point. They're kind of hanging there,
Right.
and it pulls away and it shows them, and you're like, great, now what?
Yeah, Tech had the line like, "This is not good," and then they start the other episode with, "This is not ideal." It's basically a rehash of the line.
Right.
But yeah, they've stopped and they can see the other one there, and then they know they're stuck.
Yep.
Hanging over this incredible crevasse, but they'll know them.
Like I said earlier, this was the moment that I thought, well, I guess we're not going to not going anywhere near Cantus at this point, because how are they going to resolve this?
Yeah, and at this point, I already knew what was going to happen. I was like, Tech's a goner. I know I said Echo was going to be a goner, but as soon as this was, like, Echo's got to be there to plug in with his screwdriver hand.
Yeah.
I was like, crap, we're going to take Tech.
Yeah. So to go back to, I think, our preseason final hype predictions, I had said Wrecker was going to, I think we both agreed, or at least, yeah, I think we both agreed that there needed to be a loss. Love it or hate it, somebody had to, there had to be something risky here. And I don't know if it was my Razor Crest moment or not, but I had said Wrecker was going to die because I felt like he would have the most emotional impact on Omega, right? But what I did not anticipate was that they would build Tech up so that it hit just as hard, arguably, probably harder than Wrecker dying for Omega, given what she went through with him. So
I think they would have hit differently for Omega. And I think it would have, if it would have been Wrecker had enough the last couple of episodes on Pabu to where you would have felt that one too, I think. And it may actually have been more impactful than Tech in some ways, because he was starting to carve a life out for himself. He was happy. He was able to be himself. He was, I mean, every time he was on screen, he was a joy and smiling, chasing the kids around. If anything, he probably would have been the most emotional of the bunch, given the last couple of episodes. But yeah, I can't remember where we landed on that. I should have gone back and rewatched that to refresh. I think I had probably said it was either Tech or Echo, but would it make enough? They had to, at that point, they hadn't invested enough in Tech, so it wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense for it to be Tech. But as the season went along, Tech definitely started surfacing towards the top of that.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking about that. But all right, so let's roll into Plan 99, and directed by
Which is the dumbest plan ever. That's not a plan.
Well, what is
It's the inverse of Order 66, which is Plan 99, which is basically instead of clones eradicating Jedis, clones eradicating themselves.
Yeah.
Yes. Is dumb. No Plan 99. Strike that one from the list. Just jump to Plan 100.
I was trying to think in Legends, they had a whole bunch of plans. And I remember there was something they mapped them all out, or they talked about all of them. I forget now.
Right.
Okay, so this was directed by Stuart Lee. Jennifer Corbett was the writer, and then Matt Miknovitz. I still don't know how to say that right.
I'm going to say Miknovitz, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, they were the group behind this. And we open up on the cable car, and then Tech says, basically, I can reboot this car. I got to get out to one of the terminals, and you're like already shaking your head like, this is not going to go well. So him and Tech and Hunter run up to the top. He plugs in. He gets into the terminal. And this is where things got really racy. Like when Tarkin said shoot him down and those fighters came out, I'm like, what in the? There's no way they're getting out of this 100% alive. Like somebody, I mean, the writing's on the wall all over the place at this point. Everything from, his awkward goodbye with Fee, and him stepping forward at the very beginning saying we have to do this, like this was his idea, like all this was just like sign after sign after sign. And then by the time we get to the fighters launching, unless there was going to be like some Millennium Falcons swooping in and blowing those those fighters out, I wasn't sure how they were going to get out of this, honestly.
Yeah, I do like that we get and I was kind of curious about Hemlock's response to Tarkin. So Tarkin says, order the air support to come out there, take them out, just destroy everything at all costs. And of course, the officer who was on the bridge, I guess maybe the operations officer of the whole facility, was like, but our own guys could get in the crossfire. And Tarkin's like, so just do it.
Yeah,
like,
do it.
This I command. Just do what I told you to go do. And if anything, it probably gets a little bit of Hemlock's respect in that regard, where they've had a little bit of conflict here the last couple of episodes, or a little bit of a little dissonance between the two of them. But anyway, but yeah, when they brought the V-Wings out and they started shooting and they started hitting the target, I'm with you. This was not good. And then when Tech was the one stuck on the outside, it was like, I just don't see a way for him to come back in. Like I was hoping that he still had the little gun, with the, he could shoot the thing and maybe come around, because that's usually how these things roll. They usually don't want to kill anybody off. And so they do have an out. They do have a surprise way that, you don't see coming necessarily, but no, all options were spent on this one.
Yeah. The predicament. And they even like talked about, there was that moment where Wrecker takes one step. It was very Jurassic Park. There was a scene in Jurassic Park 2, I think, that was similar, where the cars were kind of attached. One was dangling, and the weight of it all. And so it was echoing that, no pun intended. But it was echoing that, which I thought was kind of cool. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say. I mean, he's dangling there. All options are pretty much off. I mean, he's already accepted. Again, he probably ran through all of the probabilities and just resigned himself to like, this is my time. I got to go. And so he calls, Plan 99, and everybody knows exactly what that means, which means he's going to take his life, like you said, clones killing themselves or whatever. But that line, again, just to kind of touch on what I mentioned at the very beginning about when have we ever followed orders? Like, when have we ever followed orders? Like, just
the way he was delivered was just so perfect by D. Bradley Baker.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it got to me. It really got to me on my third or fourth watch. Of course, they get the car. He does that. The car's operational. And then on top of that, you got Omega screaming, go back, right? And then we get the car slamming into, coming in without any air brakes or whatever.
Coming in hot.
Yeah, they came in.
To go back to Plan 99 real quick, just to kind of round out what Plan 99 probably actually is. Plan 99 is probably, leave me behind. Like, go on, leave me behind. Not necessarily cut your losses. It's not quite as unsentimental as maybe we're making it out to be, but it was very much I'm sacrificing myself for the team in some way, right? And so the plan is to let me go so you guys can move forward. And now, granted, Plan 99 might also be, I'll catch up with you later, but that's like 99 be a part B or something.
Yeah, or later.
We'll have to wait till next season.
Later in the afterlife, maybe that's what he means.
Don't start with me, Padilla.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the old Star Trek episode 2, Wrath of Khan. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I mean, there's all kinds of This is done many times, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But that's you're right. That is essentially what Plan 99 means. And so, and we'll come back to this a little bit. We are going to talk more about Tech because I want to talk about the pros and cons of him being dead and alive. But the aftermath of the crash, I did like this whole sequence. You know, we get the perspective of Omega where she's kind of passing in and out of consciousness, and she looked like she was pretty seriously hurt. Like when she got up and she was limping, I thought, "Holy crap! Like, are they gonna?" I didn't think they would kill her, but we'd never seen Omega like hurt in this way, right? So,
It didn't come through visually, but the audio description actually said that she was bloodied and covered
oh
in
really? I
blood.
didn't. I didn't listen to the audio descriptions on this one, but
Yeah, a funny story. I had to work at a different location Wednesday, and I knew I wasn't gonna be able to watch the show until like 9 or 10 o'clock that night. So I put on the audio description in my car. So
you
I
did
listened
audio
to
only,
I did audio only, listening to it in the car.
and that
on
was
the
your
way out to
first.
the site.
That was your first like quote viewing. Was the audio only?
Yeah,
Oh,
it
cool.
was audio
Yeah.
only with the audio description. Yeah. So yeah, it was surprising when I heard it. I was like, no way, she's bloody. But when you go back, she just looks darkened, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like there's actual blood caked on, but supposedly that was the intent, though. But yeah, it was very much that kind of feeling though, like holy smokes, like she is really worse for wear, and she's in really rough shape, which I think makes all the more reason why they go to her mental.
Well, and when she came to and got up, the first thing she said was Tech. In fact, I think
Yeah.
that might have been the only thing that she said before she passed out again. When she comes to at that point, that's when we hear Hunter and Echo say, "Hey, we need to get her to Ord Mantell, get her to AZ1 or get her to AZ so they can help her because she's hurt and bloodied and all that stuff." Here's the problem I had with this: like, as much as they don't trust Sid, and I get AZ's kind of like a medical droid or whatever, but I mean, it just felt like there were other options. And don't get me wrong, I love the fact that they did this because it just builds. I mean, it all makes sense from a plot perspective. She turns on them. Omega's captured. It's the one thing I don't think anybody. It's the one thing that I think we talked about was going to happen because they did talk about it. Like he said, we have to get her because they need to get Nala Se to work on it. So again, if in Star Wars, usually if they signal that stuff, it's going to happen. What I couldn't wrap my head around is how do they get there knowing how well she's protected by the Bad Batch? So from a plot perspective, I get it. It's probably the only way they were ever going to be able to get Omega out of the hands of the Bad Batch. But it just feels like, why wouldn't they go to Pabu first? Or why wouldn't they go to Rex? Both of those people I feel maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like they probably would have had medical people, and they can trust both Rex, and I think they've come to trust the people of Pabu. But instead, they go to this droid who, I don't know. I mean, it could be any medical droid, but it's AZ and it's a personal droid, I guess, whatever. Why the heck is he even on Ord Mantell? I don't remember that. That just came to my head. But why would they go to Sid? Like, they were skeptical of her. They already burned that bridge. They'd already been talking about, she's a bad apple, a potential bad apple. I don't know. I mean, and here's how I would rationalize it. Maybe just in the heat of the moment or with everything else going on, that's where they felt the most comfortable going, or they were just kind of falling back into old habits and Sid, let's go there kind of thing. But I don't know. It just feels like it was a dumb choice in my opinion. So I need you to walk me off the ledge because I don't understand that.
Okay, a few things here.
Take it away.
We'll tackle each of these individually. You got 3 problems we're trying to solve here. So Rex is off the grid, right? He is not available. He's on a mission, and quite honestly, their location on Coruscant, I don't know how medically stocked it might be. Presumably, you're right in some level, though, that they do have the ability to do something to help care for people, but it looked like a refugee camp. It did not look like something with actual medical facility. And I think for this, we have to assume that the whole Bad Batch, and in particular Omega, are pretty banged up at this point, like really banged up. And I think that she is still hurt and needs medical attention once she gets to Tantus. I think solidifies that a little bit too. So that's why I think Rex is off the table. Point number 2, though, with Pabu, I don't know where Iriadu is in comparison with Pabu. Pabu, we know, is very remote. And so going out to somewhere very remote, if it took a lot of time to get there, now granted, it doesn't feel like it takes a lot of time to get anywhere in Star Wars with hyperspace, right? But if we say it was a few-week ride or a few days ride, that might be time that they didn't have. Also, Pabu is still recovering from a major disaster, and I don't know how advanced some of their medical technology would be. So again, strikes against it. And when you look at AZ has been taking care of clones for the better part of like 10 years.
Sure. Yeah.
right? If not longer than that on Camino and Everwell. So when you talk about experience, and he is a medical droid, and he knows what he's doing, I guess, and he can respond appropriately. Now, granted, does Sid's have all of the proper medical, abilities and all of that too? That's a strike against that location too, and of course, Sid is a strike against it. But I think when you leap to why do I need to go to look for AZ specifically, and I think it was important that they made sure Hunter said AZ. It was more about the droid, and that he would know the biology and be able to help with whatever it is to make sure that she gets the right kind of care. And again, this is more the fatherly aspect of things, of saying, okay, who can give my kid the best care?
Mm-hmm.
And she is in really rough shape. All right, I'm going to go trust AZ because AZ just knows what he was doing. And it's a risk. I think Hunter probably would probably be the first to admit it was a risk. But did he really feel like Sid was going to turn on them and betray them? Maybe, but maybe he just decided to roll the dice, or maybe he was like, no, I don't think she really could do it. We've done a lot for her, even though she's mad. We've done a lot. I don't think it would go that far.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I got there. Is like there were strikes against the other locations, and then AZ is kind of that. He was kind of that tipping point, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
Of what made it a lot more sense for him, like for that to be the place they go because of him.
So he was more of the deciding factor for why.
Yes, that in time, I think. And again, I don't know where Iriadu is compared to, like, if we were to look at it on a map, maybe some of that becomes a little more apparent, at least in our little Star Wars minds, here of how that works. But if we were to pull that up, I imagine if you look at it there, maybe that makes more sense. So if one of our listeners is out there and has a map, it might just tell us, hey, what looks like of those locations, what makes the most sense? I can understand why they wouldn't go to Coruscant, though, as well, for Rex, if that's where they would have to meet Rex, because you're getting chased by the Empire, because they were under fire when they were trying to evacuate, right?
Yeah.
So going towards Coruscant might have been inadvisable, because that would have been a lot easier to track them.
So did
I convince you?
No, it's a good point. Like I like the angle of AZ being the most medically sound, most professional, knowledgeable,
Competent.
with the confident with the biology, that in the physiology of clones, right? That makes total sense. I guess then the only thing I'd be hung up on is maybe they covered this and I just didn't think about it. They probably said this at some point, but the reason why AZ was on Ord Mantell, why would that droid not have been part of the Bad Batch and traveled with them, or been on Pabu?
I can't remember why AZ joined, like, was there in the first place.
Yeah.
It happened in season 1, right?
Honestly, it was, again, it's like I said, it's like one of those things where, like, okay, now I need to know the answer, but it was probably buried and just so, like, nonchalant, right? As how they mentioned it, or if they did. But either way, I mean, I don't want to overthink it, but I had problems with the fact that they went there because, what were they expecting, I guess? And to your point, like you said earlier, maybe he was just like, okay, well, she hasn't betrayed me yet, so, right, then I'm willing to give her, another benefit of the doubt and roll the dice, and it backfired him.
It is frustrating, though, because they gave Sid so many chances, and they tried to do as best they could in that relationship, and then they finally broke free. They finally made the choice to get away and to leave that situation, quit with the abusive relationship type of thing, and then only to go running back in an emergency. I get it. It doesn't feel good at all. And then for her to actually show her quote unquote true colors, again, that was telegraphed back in that episode,
Yep.
at the, towards the first third of the season. I mean, we knew it was coming eventually, right? We knew it had to happen eventually. And so when they said they were going to go back to Sid's, then they're like, okay, well, I guess we're going to learn some hard lessons today.
Yeah.
Or more hard lessons, right?
More hard
It just sucks. It just sucks that, Hunter had to make that call, and that felt like maybe his only choice,
Yeah. Well, either way, they get back on Ord Mantell. So Omega wakes up. First thing again, she comes to, and she's thinking about Tech, which we would expect. They kind of break the news that Tech didn't make it. She gets into the whole thing that he can't be gone. He can't be. That was pretty, again, still very touching, still super sad. And then you got even Wrecker crying, but I think he's been pretty, he wears his heart on the sleeve.
Yeah, he's an emotional guy.
Guy. Yeah. So I totally get that. But the fact that she says he didn't let us save him. Again, I just love when she says these things, because they're so innocent and so naive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't get it. But Tech's or Hunter's response it was so good. Like I really like the writing here. I even wrote the whole thing down, so I'm gonna apologize in advance. It's not that long, but he says Tech put the squad ahead of himself. He made a sacrifice, Omega. We're not going to waste it. The galaxy has changed, and so have we. It's time to put being soldiers behind us for good. Wrecker and I think Pabu could be the best place to go for a new life for ourselves, and the rest of it, well, we can figure that out along the way. So this is a very like redefining moment for me and for the team, right? He is committing that they are no longer soldiers. And this was brought to question, was it the last episode or 2 episodes ago where they were talking, who was it that asked them about how long do you plan on being soldiers?
Shep.
Yeah, it was Shep. That's right.
It's come up a couple of different times,
Yes.
but yeah, Shep
Yeah.
was the most recent.
I think it's been in kind of different variations. And I think Hunter's been rational. Like this has been on his mind. Like he's been thinking about this as he would because of everything that's happened this season. Right. But the fact that he had so much conviction in his voice that they are no longer soldiers. So what are they at this point? If they're not soldiers, what are they going to be? It does sound like right now the mission is Omega first and foremost. But beyond that, I think he's, I mean, you can take this a couple different ways, and this is good debate. It's good for open for interpretation, but at least the way I'm thinking right now, they go get Omega and they're done. Like they're going to retire. This is not their war. I think Echo and Rex, what they're doing is they're doing the greater good, but I don't think he wants any part of this anymore. And it could be the paternal instinct in him, right? He may still see Omega as a kid, and that they can't be, even though she's capable of keeping, taking care of herself and all that, but until she comes of age where she makes the decision of like, I want to go do this for me and I want to be part of this rebel alliance or whatever it is. For now, I think his MO is going to be, we're going to retire, hang back on Pabu, and no more part of this war. This is too much. There's been too much loss now.
I think in that moment, absolutely. I mean, that changes clearly, of course, but and we, like I said, we have to debate more of what's an end of season 3 type of thing look like, and thinking ahead in that way. But yeah, I think it is very much it's just enough's enough, right? Now we've lost another member of our team, presumably forever in this case, and that we would not honor that by trying to live a better life. And something that Tech was now stripped of and really kind of taken away from him, that opportunity for him to be able to live that, like Hunter feels like he owes it to give that specifically to Omega. And I think also to Wrecker, but specifically to Omega, like, no, we're all going to live through you. You have this opportunity now. We're going to make sure you have this chance to live a better life than what we have. And what we're doing is just it's not going to get better. It only gets worse. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like thinking back to Rogue One and Generosity. You take each chance until they're all spent, and then you're out, and then you're gone. And that's just something that that Hunter and Wrecker as well, I would imagine, feel like for Omega. Like they would probably end up doing that. Now, I think speculating in a season 3 and beyond type of way, they will probably learn what all is going on at Tantus. And that attitude will change. Like they do have a responsibility. They do have an ability to do something different. I think Omega, being there and experiencing it, maybe firsthand, but at least seeing it, for some indeterminate amount of time, will probably have a huge influence on that decision and that change of thinking of like, yeah, we would love to go relax and enjoy a normal life and just see what that takes us, where that takes us and how we respond to that. But I think they're going to see so many atrocities and what is truly going on. I think I'd be like, we just can't do it.
Yeah.
But again, that's probably a discussion for another day. But I could definitely see these themes will have to be revisited because they'll continue to change, especially now. Omega's seeing what Crosshair is experiencing, getting to know Emery maybe a little bit more, understanding Nala Say's perspective, and then understanding what it is the Empire truly wants to do. If any of that stuff really starts to come out in any kind of discernible detail, then I could see where they might have a little bit different perspective, a little bit, different, scope on that one at some point. But again, I can also see your point where Hunter's going to resist that probably. And he's going to be like, no, like even if we get Tech back, like just like we kind of got Omega, it just wasn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he feels personally liable and personally responsible on some level now.
Yeah. I mean, there's Crosshair. I mean, the question that comes to mind is like, who is the Bad Batch at this point, right? We don't know the condition of Crosshair. I mean, I know we've talked about him being a zombie or one of the believers, or maybe they go down that route. Hopefully they don't. I think he's forever changed though. And you've lost now Tech. So, Wrecker wants to retire. So I don't know. I'm with you. I like the idea of, okay, he's saying this in the moment and that makes total sense. But through the events that happened in season 3, maybe by the end of that, they kind of change their mind or change course or maybe dip their toe in a little bit or figure out, that, I mean, that's kind of what he's doing there at the very end, saying, and the rest of it, well, we'll figure that along the way, kind of leaving that door open that like, this is what we're going to do now. And, at some point we'll see what the galaxy brings or has in store for us. But for now, this is what we're doing. So
I think it's a big moment for Hunter too, knowing that he can't prognosticate everything. He can't go ahead and map it all out for him because this is totally new territory.
Yeah.
Right. He has no idea what that day-to-day life would look like or what is the next 6 months or what the next 2 years, any of that stuff looks like. So it makes a lot of sense. He's at least self-aware enough to be able to say, you know what, don't know what it's going to look like, but we'll figure it out together. We'll do the best as the family that we have left and make sure that it wasn't all for naught.
Right. Well, all this speech was kind of all for naught because just shortly after he delivers this very, homely, welcoming, warm pep rally speech, Sid betrays him. And this is after she nods and he says, well, that's what we'll do. I was hoping he said, then let's get to work. I was hoping he was going to say that again. He did not. So shame on you, writers. But he says, that's what we'll do. Now let's talk about Sid, kind of, because like there's clearly in my head, at least the way I was reading, like her body language and the way she was talking, she does seem remorseful, right? I don't think anybody could deny that. Like she wasn't like, kind of thing, Even, I mean, she even gave Wrecker that drink free on the house because she knew this is probably his last drink.
That's a big, important moment for her.
But, so I do feel like there was like, and again, just her body language, like she was slouching. She was not like purposely not making eye contact with most of the Bad Batch or all this because of the shame and the guilt and what that was weighing on her throughout the entire time. Even when, Hemlock comes in and he's talking about, hey, thanks or whatever, here's your money. She's kind of giving him the side eye a couple times and then she kind of has her head down. And I mean, poor her. I mean, I hate to say poor her.
Well,
but
and he told her, basically scram.
he dismissed her like a pest, like a peasant. Go.
Very meek and you never seen Sid seem so small before.
Right. No, that's a good way of saying it. So I think those are signs that at least she has a conscience, right? I mean, I get she still turned them over. And in some ways I kind of see her point, though I don't like it. I still don't like her. And again, she dies, I could care less at this point, or she comes back, she has a redemption arc. I really don't care either way. But, if the Empire did come knocking, and she kind of telegraphed all this in season 1, right? That, hey, you guys are cool here. Don't bring the Empire here, right? She has her base of operations and all that. And a lot of that is all kind of greed and self-interest. I get all that. But she did kind of lay down those rules. And if the Empire is showing up, and she said it was only who was it? I think it was her that was saying it was only a matter of time, right?
Yep.
That's what she was pitching to the Bad Batch. Like, you can't stay here. You got to you got to get a lot of money. You got to go off and live away from all of this because they're going to come at some point. And so here it happened, right? The Empire showed up. They knew that, she was harboring them and she had to make a decision. Do I lose all of this for them? What was in it for her? Right. They were going to take her, kill her, take her bar, whatever they were going to do, or she turns them over, lives another day. And then I don't know, if you really want to go down the redemption arc, maybe this is an opportunity for her to kind of have a play or a role in their release or freedom at some point. Maybe she connects with Echo and
they good on all those skills she supposedly has of her past that we've still not seen.
Right, that we've never seen. We saw them. I think we saw them once when she was in.
When she was training, kind of semi-training Omega in season 1.
Yeah. But so that's kind of where my thoughts are. Like I hate her and I hate what she did, but is she the evil character that I think a lot of people are still playing her out to be? No, probably not. There are signs there that there is some life in her still. And everybody, loves a good redemption arc in Star Wars. So maybe she has one, maybe she doesn't. I'm just kind of, I guess, indifferent at this point with her. But what do you
I
think?
mean, this is it's a Lando Calrissian moment all over again. They arrived just before you did, basically.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
What
was they supposed to do?
I mean, and so I think this is what happened. They didn't specify all this, but this is kind of, I'm guessing the Empire tracked the ship. They followed them there. Sid probably saw the writing on the wall. Look, they're going to go building to building and they're going to find them.
Right.
If I put my hand up and if I tell them, and they probably put a big reward out there almost immediately for them, right? So if I just put my hand up and I do that, my odds of getting out of this alive and with a little bit of money on the side go up dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right at this point, I think it was very much more, while the money was a big deal or was part of it maybe, I think most of this was a survival tactic for Sid, right? That she just didn't, there was no other way out. Like the other thing that she would have done would have been leave. But then if they would have identified her as harboring them for any amount of time, she was as good as dead.
Yeah.
And this is a way to at least wipe that slate clean. But yeah, I did equate it to a bit more like a Lando type of situation where what is he supposed to do? He doesn't want to, but he's also trying to protect everything that he's built, everything that, he's had when these people just kind of show up. And Sid's probably having a very much of a tough mental moment with that too. And so is she evil? No. Is she self-centered and opportunistic in her own ways? Absolutely. But does she care about the Bad Batch? I think she does. I mean, we've seen enough of it, right? To where they have shown her their character and what they would do. But in this moment, she's like, you know what? I'm no good to them dead. And so maybe in her head, she's thinking, I just need to survive another day so I can live to fight another day so I can figure out some way to come back and help them.
Yeah.
Now, is she going to go organize a huge rescue and all that good stuff? Probably not.
Probably not.
But are there little things that she could do? She would make a phone call. She could do something, or that
Call her congressman.
she would. Yeah, right. She'll just write a sternly worded letter to her governor, local governor over Ord Mantell. Whatever that might be, though, it's more of that preservation aspect. I can't do anything if I'm dead, and I'll just figure. Kind of like the hunter's point. We'll figure it out as we go because I don't know, from here what to do. This is my only. Like I am so cornered in, I'm backed into a corner. I have one option. And if I don't take this one option, then there are zero options for me, and we're all worse off for that. And not to oversell herself, but that's what I'd like to think a little bit here. And I'm with you. I think it was all the body language, the fidgeting that she had behind the bar. I don't know if the giving Wrecker a drink was supposed to be really some sort of olive branch, or if it was just buying time, or just giving herself something to do, trying to express remorse and care, because I think it does hit her in a certain way, but how much Sid would actually have to be vulnerable in order for us to really have a good idea, right? And I think that's the thing that we keep waiting for that to happen. And with Lando, when Lando, came back to the good side, like Chewbacca wanted to choke the ever-living love out of him, right? Yep. And so you get that initial reaction. You have to earn that back. You have to talk a little bit about what happened. They've got to have that conversation at some point in order to say, here's what I did. I really do want to help you guys, though. And she can maybe finally have that vulnerable moment and be able to kind of get back in our good graces, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Lando analogy because it is very, very similar in a lot of ways. I skipped over one thing. It was Gonky that told him something was coming. He starts gonk, gonk, gonk kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they lost communications. With Jonesy, if you lose communications, it can mean only one thing.
Invasion.
So at least we got that again.
I thought about you in that moment.
It happens a lot in Star Wars.
It does, yeah. It's a very telltale sign.
Yep. He wasn't wrong.
Right. There's nothing you can do about it.
He was not wrong. Okay, so Omega jumps into the vents, and Hunter's like, "Hey, get out of here, whatever." And of course, she doesn't listen because she's thinking, "I can't lose even more of my brothers or whatever."
Well, whenever they ever followed orders, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point.
Just learning from Uncle Tech.
Uncle Tech, gone but not forgotten.
That's right. Applying the lessons you don't want applied in those moments.
So let's talk quickly about Hemlock, right? He comes in, they stun Wrecker, or they at least subdue him. Although I like he took that stun bolt and just kept on going. Like you weren't going to stop him with just one. Hemlock's conversation with Hunter was pretty telling. I love that he was getting under his skin about, hey, you're the leader, must suck to lose people. Hate to lose another one, right? I mean, all this was really good dialogue from Hemlock and just being sinister in that moment. The goggles, though, that he does show, where he mentions that he found him. There's the part of me that doesn't. What's that?
Only thing that was salvageable, right?
Well, and I question that.
When I saw that, I'm like, nope, he's alive.
So he's if you're okay, so here's something I got a question for you. If he's falling that far, and you've got basically I don't know, let's just call it a half-ton boxcar chasing you from above. Like, that seems like a really difficult predicament to get out of. And I don't want to talk about that because we're going to save that to the very end about whether or not he lived and how he lived. But nonetheless, like, if the goggles did fall, like, those things shouldn't even be like from that height. They'd be pieces and shattered. And so,
Oh, sure.
to your point, I guess is where I'm going with this is like, I don't believe he's alive, and I would rather he stay dead for a lot of reasons. But the fact that he had those goggles and they were Tech's goggles, that would lead me to think that, okay, then maybe he didn't hit the ground, right? He wasn't smashed by this big chasing boxcar above him or whatever, with air car or cable car. So maybe he did live, but that would be the only sign for me that he did. But either way, I thought it was a good tactic from Hemlock to kind of bring those forward and really kind of twist the knife in the side of Hunter that he needs to give up, because all of this is, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, he wants Omega, but the more he can get Hunter and Wrecker and the people that she cares about the most to give up and surrender, then he can use that. He knows he can use that as leverage to finally get her to kind of turn over and give up. So,
Yeah, I mean, the tactics were sound. I mean, and granted, if I were Hunter, I don't know why you just didn't pull the trigger. Hey, what do I got to lose? At least I can take out this, and just
true.
say this part of this part of this experiment will be done. Now, granted, that would have cut off any kind of opportunity to get to Crosshair and really what they were trying to do in the first place. And does that spit in the face of Tech's sacrifice as well? As far as Tech, finding a way to survive, or at least not be completely dead and then be salvageable from an Imperial standpoint, kind of like an Echo in some kind of ways. You can change your rate of descent, right? I mean, gravity's a thing, right? 9.8 meters squared. You can't change that, but he could get on top of the car, right? Just by changing how you descend, how much resistance you have, all of those. So he just gave up and just fell and died. I'm not willing to say any of the Bad Batch would have done that. They would have, again, tried to figure out something. What other options do I have available to me that I can at least try? Because what have I got to lose? I got absolutely nothing to lose in this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that he may have found a way to, be severely maimed, in all realistic scenarios, right? But maybe not completely dead, or at least barely alive, to where if someone did find him, there was at least a little smidgen of opportunity. I think that's where I'm at now. Is he out there walking around, trying to find a way to get back to the family and all of that? Absolutely not. Because that would be silly. But was he in a very, very, very bad spot, a very, very, very bad condition on the blink of death, and maybe crossing over, when he was found, and then they do something with him? To me, that would be very Star Warsy, very Echo-y, and a lot of other, I mean, Darth Vader. I mean, we just have so many examples of it too, where these characters that we think are gone, and by all reasonable accounts, they should be, right? And in the real world, none of these things are ever possible, right? But where they're all very unlikely. But you know what? Maybe he fell into a river. Now, granted, he's probably tens of thousands of feet in the air. So does that count?
Would have splattered. Yeah.
I know there's so many things, right? Yeah, you would have broken like glass, right? So we'll see. It's Star Wars. I don't think it cheapens anything if he's not dead, by the way. I think, if anything, there's a completely different arc. Finding Echo was alive was a huge shock. Seeing him in the state he was in was a huge shock. I actually want to go back and rewatch those Clone Wars episodes to, see when he disappeared, and then see when they come back and find him. And I just remember being in utter terror of seeing what had become of him.
Yeah.
I was like, there's just no way he's going to make it out of these episodes alive. Like, that's not living, right? But Echo found a way. Echo has blazed a new trail for himself. So if Tech did find a way to survive, in whatever state that might be, maybe he's going to become a Bomar monk. Just saying. It's a thing. The technology is there. We can rebuild them.
Okay. Yeah. Bomar monk. I didn't have that one on my list, but hey, you never know, right?
Neil's got my back. I believe in Tech survival skills. Thank you, Neil.
Had two, Brute. Had two. I think he's dead. I'll tell you why later. Okay. Well, let's get back to the next part of here where Omega. I don't know if he caught this, but we've had a lot of Indiana Jones references this season.
Yeah.
But her coming out with the bow pointing down like that was right out of Raiders of the Lost Ark when
Right.
Indiana Jones has got the bazooka and he's threatening Belloc that he's going to blow it up, right?
Gonna blow the ark to hell.
Blow the
That's
ark to
right.
hell. Yep.
Send it back to God, Jones.
Yeah, that was right out of there. And I loved every minute of that. So kudos
Yeah.
to them for continuing on that stuff.
And they really doubled down the season. On
They
on the
tripled,
indie.
quadrupled down on some of the Indiana Jones references.
Every single episode. I mean, even the cable car was a bit like the bridge in Temple of Doom,
Yeah.
you know, to an
The
extent.
risk that was involved, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And this speaks to Omega's, like, you know, what was she going to do? Like, it was just this was very in character for her to do, and at the same time it was kind of foolhardy, and we knew where this was going to go, right? This was not going to end very well. And I think was it in the audio? Like, I've seen everybody talk about that being Scorch that jumped behind her and hit her with the stun gun. Did they talk about that? Because they never said the name, but
They never mentioned his name at all, I think, in any of the episodes.
Oh.
Audio description, closed caption, nothing, but they, named him in the title card. I mean, in like the wallpaper that Star Wars
character
would do.
wallpapers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the character sheet's there. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was him.
All right, that's fair. I mean, you'd want it to be somebody like, super important or whatever.
I do want to learn more about the Imperial Commandos, though. I just want to understand why are they so gainfully employed at this stage when they are actively trying to get rid of the rest of the clones in general. So there must be something unique about them. I really hope we get some of that soon.
Yeah. So yeah, we get to, he says that Tarkin wants to interrogate Hunter and Wrecker personally, which I thought that would be interesting if that actually ever happened.
That was frustrating, man.
Why is that?
That was really frustrating because I was like, dang it. Now we're not going to Tantus for them either.
Yeah, no one's going
to Tantus.
Yep.
Take me to Tantus.
AZ heads off to find Echo at this point. Also, they kind of have their little moment there. 2 robots. I'm just kidding. Half robot, one or one android, half android. They have their little moment where they hijack one of the ATSTs, and there's a cool little sequence there where they shoot one down. Basically, they free Wrecker and Hunter, and then they decide they're going to go try to stop Hemlock from getting in his shuttle and lifting off. That moment, this is the moment where the music I was talking about, where it was so iconic, when that Lambda class shuttle flies up, and I love the shot, like it's kind of in your face. We cut over to Hunter, and it's a very Steven Spielberg moment. Like, Spielberg is known for certain shots, and one of them is that close, tight shot of somebody's face as they're looking up with wind and lights, and it was like right out of a Spielberg, which was
like right out of like E.T.
Yeah, it's like,
is what it reminded me of. And like, maybe it was 2001 too. There was a scene that was like that.
Well, yeah, where he's going through the monolith.
Very much remind me of E.T. though.
Yeah, and it's a trademark of Spielberg. He does it in so many different movies, and that even as more recent as Ready Player One, right? It's just that tight shot of the camera's moving, and you get to see their eyes, and they're like, in wonderment. But yeah, that when the music starts there, that's where I felt like, wow, this is amazing stuff, and it doesn't stop. Like, it continues all the way to the very end, even into that last shot as we're pulling away further and further away from Tantus. So enjoyed all of that. But yeah, so they get into the Marauder. It looked like it was damaged, and I don't remember where that came from. Like, it had a big trail of black smoke behind it. Did you catch that?
I think it got hit like in the action. So
did it? I must have missed it. Yeah, when it happened. But
yeah, I meant to go back and look more closely at that, but I'm pretty sure it just got shot.
Yep.
Or maybe it was already damaged from when they escaped Iriadu.
Yeah. Okay. No, that would make sense.
Either one works, I guess.
Yep. But yeah, we get this, like, again, the conviction in Hunter's voice about he's vowing that this is now their mission and we don't stop searching until we do. Right. So that seems to be where season 3 is going to pick up, at least from Hunter's perspective. And and I wonder too, like, how much this is changing him too. Like, earlier I said, I kind of feel like they're going to just go ahead and retire and call it a day once they get Omega back. But I do wonder, and all joking aside, I wonder if we're going to get this kind of Taken or, give me back my son moment where he's just kind of, I'm not going to say go crazy or, lost himself, but maybe gets a little edgier, because he's been pretty timid, like, all things considered. And it's a kid's show, so I'm not saying he's going to go start breaking necks on television, but I think the gloves are coming off. Like, they've taken his kid. His worst fears have been realized. the Empire is as bad as everybody's been saying, and it's finally hit them in a really big way, because now they've lost not only Tech but his daughter. I think we're going to see a different Hunter next season, which, maybe it's just the headband that he loses, but I think emotionally, I think he's
I was
going to
about to
be
say, usually this is where you get a montage of them, painting things. He's already
already
all done
done.
up though.
He's always
Right.
ready to go at any given moment. So he
Yeah.
sleeps with the headband on too. But
Yeah, he probably does.
yeah,
No, I think you're onto something here. That would be interesting if you had a darker version of the character, because when you have extreme moments of stress and you feel like especially in these types of things, if you lose a child, I imagine most people would probably have that type of reaction. Like, I will go to the ends of the earth to do everything I can to bring my kid back and to bring them back safely, and to make sure that whoever did this to them is punished in the most severe ways, right? I mean, that's normal reaction for us. That's just the way that we care, right? And we want to protect, and we want to exact that retribution in some kind of
Mhm.
ways after the fact, or maybe while you're going through it all. So it would be interesting if they give us a darker version of Hunter. I think it would be where this season we've been a little bit critical of. It does feel like he's gotten a bit flat, right? He's showing growth in different ways that are less exciting or less, quote unquote, interesting. But is this another opportunity for us to see Wrecker kind of pull him back, or that tension developing, because he is just he's just dealing with so much grief and loss and sorrow,
Yeah.
And just feeling the weight of all of the responsibility, and the way that he has let this team, like Hemlock's words just echoing in his head, for months at a time, or however much time is going to pass before we get to season 3. But to have that conflict within the team as well, and to feel like, there's something more, there's more to the character, and we'll have to soften and sand some of those edges back down in order to do it. Because just because you save her, at what cost to yourself, and what does that change? What does that change do to you, and whether you can come back from that. And that kind of puts Hunter on the death watch list, of course, for season 3, because
True.
usually those people make that ultimate sacrifice at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll be like, Tech's alive, so I got to go die now.
Yeah. Right. Life for a life.
That's right. Repay the favor.
And that pretty much ends, at least that particular piece for the characters, right? For Hunter and for Echo and Wrecker, we kind of know where their trajectory is at this point. It is Omega, and we cut over to Omega and picking up on the other stuff that's been laid here in season 2, which is the cloning, Tantus, Emery, all Nala Se. And again, I was not expecting this to kind of be the finale or the cliffhanger, and I'm okay with it. Honestly, it's fine. I enjoyed it, but essentially it was almost like
needed this. I kind of needed this, actually, to be honest with you.
yeah, I know.
I didn't realize it.
Yeah, I would agree. We did need something here, right? Some kind of a closure. I would call it. Now we're going to call it closure because it doesn't end, but definitely closure, at least for the season, right? Or at least the story.
A less ambiguous ending of sorts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But it was a reunion of sorts, right? It was almost like a reunion of Omega with her mother, Nala Se. We talked about that in season 1, I think, that she kind of we at least talked about how the way that she was looking out for Omega, she's the one that allowed Omega to escape in season 1. There was probably some kind of a paternal instinct there, looking at her as that, right? More than just a clone. So that seems
maybe we'll get some of those questions answered that we had all the way back then.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have more conversations, which is great, because I'd love to know more about that relationship, more than what we saw in season 1. But not only was it a reunion with her as, quote, the mother, but then, she's also reuniting with her brother, Crosshair. And then the big, surprise is that Emery is a clone. And we'll get into why that is here in a little bit and some thoughts. But yeah, I mean, it's just like gone from one family to another family here on Tantus. And she's questioning, like, why did they bring me in? All of this would make sense. It lines up. I'm surprised Nala Se didn't say anything, but maybe Nala Se didn't know. I thought they had told her that they were going to, but maybe not. Maybe that probably lines up.
Right. Yeah. Nala Se, they didn't engage with Lama Su until after he had made the really vague threat to Nala Se that, hey, you won't like you won't like what I do if you don't cooperate.
Never said.
And then that's when they,
though.
Yeah, it didn't sound like they ever really came back around to her and say, here's what we're trying to do. Because again, she can be like, okay, yeah, whatever, good luck, So it makes sense that it would be more impactful just to surprise her of saying, I brought you back your kid. You're welcome. You're ready to do this. You're ready to do this thing for us, right?
Yeah. Or,
Here's your opportunity.
yeah, I mean, she says, look, either if you fail or if you fail or refuse, Omega is going to be punished. She's the one that's going to suffer, is essentially what
Right.
Hemlock tells her.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want a parent to do something, go after their kids.
Yeah. I mean, you said that with such conviction. I don't know what to think about that. And then there's like the Emperor's Project too, right? Like, and we talked about this about already, but just to kind of touch on it here. Nala Se is saying, look, this is not even possible. Like what he seeks is not possible. They've proven they can clone all day long, every day, bodily tissue of alien species. And they're known for cloning more than just humans in Star Wars. They've cloned
Right.
all sorts of species and they've been picked to do this stuff, right?
So like a Zillow beast.
Yeah, and Zillow beast. So really the only thing, like if she's talking about what he wants is not possible, that's the only other thing in my head, again, this is just purely headcanon, but it's got to be force sensitivity. Like, I don't know what else they could be going after like this.
Yeah. Like I said, there's kind of two things I think that make sense in that respect.
Yeah. Or
And
I
I
liked
think-
your idea too, where you said it was more about how do we create a biological chip through DNA similar to the chips that, like Order 66. How do we clone and create beings that are that don't have chips but are still subservient to the Emperor and the Empire and do their bidding without question, kind of thing.
Well, that was less about cloning. I think it was more about just a scientific, some sort of biological agent that would allow you to do something. It would be interesting if cloning was involved with that, though.
Oh, that's how
But
I
yeah,
interpreted that. But
Oh, okay. Yeah. The two things I was talking about more specifically were, I think, one for transferring your conscience of a force user into another force user's body. So planning for life after death. Or the other aspect of that, and maybe the more realistic one in this case, is creating a life that is force sensitive. And so this would be, and I've got the book right in front of me, but I can't remember what is the Emperor's disappointment of a son's name. Starts with a D, I think, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember the
That's
name.
a deep cut now, but no. Yeah.
Yeah. So from Shadow of the Sith, right? So Rey's parents,
Mhm.
basically, of trying to create a vessel for, or create a clone, because we know he was a clone, right? And so this is it's really more of that. It's not necessarily the Emperor's clone. It might be more of a lineage and his own succession planning, his own legacy, type of way of thinking about it. So there's a couple of different angles, but those two, when it comes to the Emperor and what's important to the Emperor, is it subjugating an entire galaxy, or is it consolidating his power and controlling his legacy? And so, Stephanie got out there, Dathan. Yeah. So Rey's dad was Dathan. So again, I like that now we've integrated in with Shadow of the Sith from Adam Christopher. That's a fantastic connection there, and the kind of that loop around, I think would be a lot of fun. And it takes it less focus off the Emperor's Operation Cinder type of thing many years, to come in the future, but more focusing on, no, he's been trying to create a child of the Force for a very long time to recreate whatever happened with Anakin, but trying to do it, for real this time, or kind of do it the right way and have complete control end to end over it this time.
Mhm. Yep.
I'm liking that theory a lot more every time I think about it.
Yeah. Okay, and then she goes in, she sees Crosshair, very sentimental. Crosshair, whatever she was saying, I forget what she was saying. And then Emery walks up and she says, ironic, you trust the Kaminoans, but not me. She says, I don't know you. She says,
Just met you, woman.
Yeah.
God.
And she's like, no,
Back
we're
off.
sisters, Omega.
So look at these cool glasses I've got. How could you not trust me?
Yeah. I think part of the glasses were to kind of hide the fact, because when she pulled them off, you're like, oh yeah, she does look like an older Omega. I mean, it was already there, but it was.
Well, the brown hair threw it off, and then you can't
Yeah.
see the caramel color eyes.
Right. Yeah. But as soon as she pulled the glasses off, like, oh, okay, yeah, that does look like an older version or slightly different version or variation of Omega. That's interesting. I wonder if it would be the same version, because all the clones are the same. Well, no, tech looks different than the others in
Well,
records.
I saw some things out in the Twitterverse today that, we're trying to say, why are we so surprised that there's, this whole show is about unique clones. So why are we so shocked that there is an adult female clone? Well, because this is only the second one we've ever seen. So, I mean, it's still new for us. That's why it's still surprising.
Right. And that's a good point. Like, I'm not against it. Like I'm all for it. What's
No, it's
shocking,
interesting.
it's
Like I want to understand why,
yes.
like why, you know?
And that's what I have. My question down here is, why was Emery created? Right?
Right.
Like, was this Nalise's kind of side project that she was doing? Is there something about, female clones or non-traditional male clones, or, genders aside, was there something different about the process that they decided they needed to do this? And Omega herself too. Like, why was Omega created? We've never gotten the answer to that. I don't know how old Emery is now, but I would imagine she's probably accelerated, because that would, if she wasn't, then Emery was created before all of them, which really throws my head into a twist at this point. But she would have to have been accelerated. So again, it opens up more and more questions, which is good. I mean, I hope we get the answers
Yeah,
in the next season.
absolutely.
But I do have a lot of questions about why. It's not that she is, it's just the why. Like, I want to know the why, and I'm sure there's a reason for all of that.
Yeah, I do have another theory with that, but it comes across as sexist, so I'd rather not share that one.
Yeah, don't share that one. So,
Well, I mean, it's not intentional. It's
no, I
just
know.
it's just biology, right? Like if you want to go to the Dathan line, then you need a vessel that might be able to, be able to carry another child or carry a child. And so if you're doing genetic enhancements across the board, then
Oh,
that's a path.
I like that.
It's a path, right? Where you create one. And again, they view these beings as property and as not human for the most part, right? So this isn't Chris saying this stuff. This is like Star Wars, just, a story.
Yeah.
So let's just keep it in perspective there. But, but I can kind of think of ways behind that. But again, that's that's limiting women in a very specific way. And I don't think that would be the intent of that, but I could definitely see from an empire perspective that something like that would make a lot of sense.
I mean, George Lucas didn't have a problem putting Leia in a bikini, half naked, but whatever. No, all kidding aside. So here, I don't know if this is what you're talking, but this was what I was just thinking. Like, the idea of force cloning or cloning for a force sensitive has been failing, right? It's impossible. We can't do it. But if we were to clone a female and then somehow impregnate the female with a clone, and through the natural life and birth, that was more conducive to that offspring being force sensitive.
Like whatever happened with Anakin, right?
Exactly.
In the comics, we have this image that is burned in my brain forever, where we have a picture of Shmi, who's, I believe she's pregnant.
Yep.
And she's got the little spiral, which was a real big thing in that comic, as Vader's kind of walking through and losing parts of himself. But you have the Emperor who's kind of hovering over, like he is influencing whatever is going on. And it's very ambiguous in that regard, but it seems very clear in some ways.
Sure.
Very much to exactly that point you're making, though, of like, okay, did he do something right that time?
Yep.
And is he trying to recreate it now, but he's trying to do it in a more synthetic way so that he has a lot more control over it end to end?
Right. And it has been working. So the need for female clones is, unfortunately, that's where life comes from right now. Right. So,
right.
No, I think we figured it out. There you go. That's season 3. And, you have any complaints?
We need to make a YouTube short of just this part of it so we can document it properly, so we can go back to this in a year and a half whenever Bad Batch season 3 comes out.
Yeah. As I say, if you have any complaints, you can send them over to Jonesy at cantinacast.com, especially
Mike Rondo at earglemedia.com, and address that does not exist anymore.
There you go. Jonesy at cantinacast.com. Sexist remarks and feedback. Please send them there.
Send your hate mail to me. Yes. If you don't want me on the show anymore, just send me an email.
Yep. But yeah, the other just quickly thing, if you look in the background, there's all these tanks and clones and stuff going on. So they've been busy doing a lot of stuff.
Kind of looked a little bit tall and lanky.
Yeah.
Like a certain
Snoke guy.
Like a Kino Loy, yeah.
Get off Kino Loy. He's dead. Is he? Okay, enough of that. All right. The camera pulls back. We see, Tantus from the halls. Then it pulls back to the landing bay. Then we finally see the big mountain. So I guess we're going back there again in season 3. And that's how it ends. So, again, a lot
of beautiful establishing shots.
Yeah. Tantus is gorgeous. Like, they've done a number on that place. I really like what they've done with it. Never imagined it that cool looking. So, all right. So the big question is Tech dead. So I don't want to belabor this. In fact, I was thinking this is probably something I'll take to a Jeditorial, or maybe we do a Patreon show. I think the short and long of it all is I do personally feel like if they brought him back, it would cheapen his sacrifice. I'm getting to the point now where I get in Star Wars, nobody's ever really gone. And I already wrote this Jeditorial in my head, and almost going to start with that line, to be honest. Like there's some pros and cons of all of this, but there does come a point where I think we get oversaturated with some of these things. And for Omega, here's what I would say, and it's not an out, but I do right now. It feels like he needs to stay dead because I think it's going to do a lot for Omega. It's going to do a lot for Hunter, and I want to see what that looks like. Now, if we get the end of season 3, even if he doesn't come back, and they're in a better place, and it makes sense to bring him back, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to it right now. But I do like the fact that he did sacrifice himself. I think it does good for his character, especially how much they gave us of his character. Like I said at the very beginning, how much it increased the stakes for it all. I mean, there are characters that have died and stayed dead, like Kanan. And I put this up there with Kanan in terms of how I felt. Like how I felt emotionally about the character dying is similar to Kanan. I hated the fact that Kanan died, but I really enjoyed it. I love that character. I don't ever want Kanan to come back because I got to see what it did for Ezra. And I guess that's what I'm saying, right? If we see an Omega who's now developed and become bigger, better, Hunter, bigger, better because of this, then don't ever bring them back, right? But if they're still kind of, they've not developed, they've not grown past it, they've not been able to come to terms with it, and their characters are stagnant because of it, then fine, bring them back, because maybe that's what they need to get to that next level. But I just don't want them to take that away from them if we see them come back as a different character in a different state next season, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, when we lose Jedi, it feels different, right? Because there's a life after death already. So it doesn't even quite feel the same in some ways. But I'm with you though. I think at some point the permanent aspect of death has to mean something. It can't be continued to be worked around. And it really does. And again, I think like Jen Erso and with Cassian Andor, even though we've gone back in the past to bring those characters to life, or at least Cassian, not finding some loophole or some way around it is important, because again, they have that finality of it has to feel like you sacrificed for something meaningful, and it wasn't for naught.
Mm-hmm.
A key difference is that these are very small moments and very small character groups, and these moments don't necessarily have huge galactic implications. Yeah, thank you. So I think from that respect, are you willing to flex, things a little bit more in those regards? And I think historically, Lucasfilm and Star Wars has been like, yeah, sure. We'll find ways around, because if we can make it compelling enough and make it somewhat believable enough and make that story interesting and good, right? And Echo's a great example of that, more of a disappearing act and some of that. And I understand wanting to build that drama and the debate maybe about like what we're having here, whether it's true or not, but at some point, I do agree with you though, that a character needs, if we're going to show that they're dead, let's have that mean something. Let's have that risk be a real object and something we have to respect, rather than continue to go back and say, well, no, we can kind of work around this and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
We don't have to take it away from the character. This is a pure case where I think this is why I think Tech's going to come back though, is because I don't have to respect that right now. And so maybe that's kind of where I'm at. The more you kind of, preface this, maybe that's where I'm at. It's like, I don't have to believe it because we didn't see a body. A lot of things can happen in that 10, 15,000 feet. A lot of those are not falling to your bloody death, apparently. But I mean, I don't have to respect it at this point. I think it is part of the issue. So I can give myself an out, because Star Wars is going to find the out for me anyway. We have this advanced science division that they have telegraphed to us can do whatever they want and do a variety of different ways and have a huge budget. And they, to where I don't have to believe that death is an inevitability when you fall, from that height. And so we've kind of created that animal for us within the Star Wars universe, I think. So we've kind of done that to ourselves.
Yep.
And so if they want to reestablish it, these are the types of moments where you need to reestablish it and just say, no, the character truly is gone and there is no coming back. And you prove it by pumping out another 16 episode season, and you don't give any hints that he's dead, and then you confirm he's really dead in some way. Maybe you don't see a puddle on the floor or something, because that'd be a little gross.
Well,
but
yeah, I don't know how you prove it. Like, and
I don't know. Well, you just don't bring him back, right? And you don't start skirting or flirting with it or teasing it that it's even possible, right? I mean, you just accept it, and it is a certainty, and it just is, and you just you don't debate it. And I know they do that too and still bring a character back. I get that too from Omega and Hunter and Wrecker's perspective. He's dead because they saw it,
Yeah.
quote unquote.
Well,
But anyway, but again, we have to respect death, and we just don't have to right now.
no, I get that. That makes sense. The part that really bugs me is the goggles, because if they never showed the goggles, then everybody would be on board with, well, we never saw the body, right? That's always this. There's no body, so that person's got to be alive, and I get the logic there, especially in Star Wars. But then they give us something. They're not going to give us the body because it's probably a puddle, right? It's just mush, right? So they give us the goggles as representing the body. But then the people that are still like, no, he's not dead, then, oh, well, that's probably just a plant. Like, those aren't really his goggles, or I don't understand, like, physically, I don't understand how those goggles would even be anything but just bits and pieces at this point falling from that height. So it works both ways is all I'm saying, right? You can make an argument for and against the goggles being there and whether Tech's alive or dead. Here's the real big problem that I have with it. And it's not even so much that he's still alive. I do not subscribe, and I will not subscribe to a character such as Tech being succumbed to evil experiments. And I've seen this everywhere. Like, now they've got him and they're doing experiments on him and he's going to be this evil character. I mean, it's just like, that's not Star Wars. I'm sorry. It's not. You can talk about Echo all day long, and I know there's an argument there for Echo that he was plugged in and they made him more machine than man. There's a lot of arguments that I could make of why that's not the same as Tech, because we got so much from Tech, but you just don't do that to Star Wars characters. You don't kill them and bring them back as something completely sinister like that. It's like the same reason why I said from the very beginning, Rey was never going to die. She was never going to turn to the dark side. There's certain things that are just off limits and that are pure and good about Star Wars. And Tech is one of those. And I can't see them doing that to that character. It's just not, it's not good writing. And there's no precedence that's been set for Star Wars, in my opinion.
Well, and remember what they did with Echo is that while he was serving their purposes, they were basically torturing him the entire time.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't like he was a mindless agent of evil. He had literally no control and was suffering throughout the experience as well.
Yeah.
And so if you point to Echo as an example, or not you, or just anybody wants to point to Echo, you have to keep that in kind of in the front of your mind that was how that situation came out. You're right. He wasn't just a mindless robot or whatever. But I mean, hey, maybe they can transfer his consciousness into the Havoc Marauder, and kind of like L3 and the Falcon, right? And then just never talk about it ever again.
Yeah, never bring it up again, ever.
Ever. Even though you have plenty of opportunity.
Yeah. We're breaking the 2-hour mark. So I just want to, we've already talked about all the questions that I had at the very end. I mean, just quickly, season 3, do you think we're going to get, I think we're going to get a season 3. I mean, I can't see how we wouldn't at this point. Like, there's they've backed themselves in the corner, and maybe they haven't, that's not probably a good analogy or colloquialism, but they certainly have all the reasons to do a season 3. Do you think we're going to get an announcement here at E3? Do you think it's premature, or do you think is it enough for them to just go out and say, yeah, y'all are right, we're getting a season 3. We may not have anything really to talk about at this point, or is there's a Bad Batch panel, is there not?
Monday on the 10th.
Yeah, Monday on the 10th. So if they don't announce it before then, I would fully expect them to just at least acknowledge that, yes, it's in the works. The only caveat to all of this is that dark cloud that's looming over Disney and Lucasfilm right now about we're cutting back and we're trying to save money and all the reasons we talked about a couple episodes ago.
Right.
That could be the only thing that probably prolongs it. Even still, like, I can't see them canceling this and saying we're not going to do this because of budget constraints. I feel like Star Wars, it's in its own bubble. It's not as expansive and as wide as like Marvel. They don't have that big of a net that's currently cast out there and have a lot of shows that are like have targets on their backs. And this feels like, because Filoni's behind it and it's been pretty successful in terms of reception, even though it may not be getting the new subscribers and the hits and downloads and all that. I think they're going to want to see this one through regardless. But what do you think?
I mean, I hope that's the case. I think it'll be very telling, the type of announcement that we get. So I think at Celebration again. So there's a Bad Batch panel on Monday, and it's going to have all of the main people we keep talking about that have written and edited the show, as well as D. Bradley Baker, Michelle Long, Filoni. They're all going to be there, right? So the opportunity will be there to announce it. But you're right. Will they kind of willow this thing where they say, yeah, we intend to do it, but when? I think that'll be the telling.
Yeah. Right.
Conversation there is whether they're willing to commit to a time frame and say, oh yeah, it'll be winter 2024 or something like that, to where they would be able to just point to it. I think that would address that influence you're talking about, the dark cloud of what do the budgetary constraints or changes or disciplines, however you want to phrase that, how is that going to impact our content that we have? I think the interesting thing about a Bad Batch though is that it's animated. They have a shop set up for this. This is like Disney. If you remember back a handful of years ago, they actually went through like a revamping, and Lucasfilm as well, the animation department, to make sure that it was very streamlined and very, very much able to do this type of content and do it consistently and do it affordably. I think within reason. So again, put it to the test. Okay, how affordable is it to make these? How streamlined is that process that they're able to do this? I think another aspect of this is going to be, how many episodes do they want to do? They don't have to do 16, right? They could do 12, they could do 10, they could shorten this up as well. And I think those are other ways we could see that overall, quote unquote Disney influence, or at least the budgetary constraints that we feel like are going on. I'd hate to say constraint. I should probably just say the more budgetary discipline that Bob Iger wants the company to have as a whole.
Yeah, right.
Do I think Star Wars is in a bubble? No, I actually don't. I don't really subscribe to that. I think there are certain aspects of how much content they feel is a minimum they need to turn out for a Marvel or for a Star Wars or things like that. But is it not susceptible to any of these other market conditions? No, I don't. I think it's all kind of on the table for Bob Iger at this point. At least that's the impressions he's giving us, I believe. And just knowing kind of his history in business, I think it just makes a lot of sense for that to be the case. But they have options, I think, is my point.
Yeah.
So I think that my theory here, my anticipation of what we'll get in the Bad Batch is that they will announce a season 3. I mean, we left it off. We have to have a season 3 eventually, right? And I think they will give us a rough timeline on when that would be. But I also know that might get, I'm not as 100% on that one. That one I'm a little bit more like 60-40 on. That will actually get a rough time frame of when we would see it. I don't anticipate that for probably another year and a half, though.
Yeah, I would agree.
It'll be a ways away still.
Right. Yeah.
But good season. But a good season. I think enjoyable season through and through. Like we talked about earlier and throughout the season, were there a lot of really, I use the word watershed moments. I think individual character moments, there's numerous of those. But are they these huge galaxy shifting type of things? No. And will that make the season less memorable for many? Probably yes. Right. But I think when we talked about this before, like the things that Andor had to do really well, you have to invest the time in these moments early on in order to get that benefit for them later. And I think Tech is a great example of that. I mean, we got that for Tech this year, where they were smaller moments. Was it enough for some people? Probably not. But I think they were enough, and we did enough for him throughout the season in some aspects of things that it meant a lot more for us to lose this character now, even if only temporarily.
Yeah. Well, Jonesy, it would be completely reckless and irresponsible of us to speculate on season 3. And I think that's what we should do. In fact, I think we should do that as a Patreon episode, because what better to be reckless than with other people's money? So maybe for the next Patreon show, we'll come back and kind of do a recap of season 2.
Well, the good news with that, Albert, actually, is that by the time we have an opportunity for another Patreon show, it'll probably be in a couple of weeks, a couple of Sundays. So we will have the context from the Bad Batch panel. Again, we will have a live stream Monday night as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that idea. I like being able to come back and focus more on that specifically, take anything that we learned from that and apply that and see what that future might look like in more detail.
Yeah. And I also want to bring in some of the final hype stuff, some of the things that we predicted, because I didn't get a chance to go back this weekend and listen to kind of what our final predictions were and some of the things that we were hoping. But retrospectively, it'd be cool to kind of go back and see where we on. How much did we get right? How much did we get wrong? Do we love or hate the fact what we got based on, what our headcanon was and what our expectations were going into the season? So,
you know what I love? We get every single time we do a live stream, Albert.
Weird comments from
lots of discussion and chat from the folks that come out and pay us a visit. So if you're listening to the show, if you're downloading it, thank you so much for downloading the episode. If you'd like to come out and join the conversation, we would love for you to come out to the live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube. Usually we do this on Sundays and Thursdays. I anticipate we'll probably keep that schedule up here as Bad Batch is rolling off now. And of course, Mandalorian's still very much in the rotation here on Thursday nights. But you can join these amazing people that we had in the chat tonight: Jonathan, Steph, Sky, Music Train, Lauren, Blitzkrieg, David, Risk, Ronald, Qui-Gon J, Neil Sega, and Hard Counter. Thank you everyone for coming out. Again, cantinacast.com/YouTube. Go out there. There's a post out there with the schedule for next weekend. 6 total live streams, everyone. 6 total live streams. We're a little crazy here, but like Albert has said to me numerous times, this is our Super Bowl. This is what we do. We're super excited about this. I'm a little more excited than I realized I was. Putting down every little detail that we've got. So there's a lot of the little 15-minute interviews that they did on the Celebration live stage. We'll watch some of that too. So in our end of day recaps, we'll be able to go and pull any interesting nuggets from anybody that's showing up on the stage, as well as from the major panels, of course. And hopefully we'll be able to tag some of our friends over across the pond that can give us some boots on the ground insight as to what they're feeling, what they're hearing, what the buzz is, what's the scuttlebutt, as they like to say.
What's the beat, man? What's the pulse?
You got the beat.
Let's go, goes. Okay. Well, with that, I think we'll end the show there. We'll be back on Thursday. I didn't think about that too. We got Thursday night because we're going to be covering the next episode of The Mandalorian, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. Want to point that out again. Still no title.
Expectations are quite high for this.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Well, she's knocked it out of the park every time so far. So
it's almost a given to call it a Bo-Katan episode these days, right?
Yeah.
Everything's a Bo-Katan episode.
Yeah, that's what The Mandalorian was about. It's just a big veil. It's never been about Din. It's been about Bo-Katan, and I'd be okay with that. But
I like that it's evolving though, and it's not just a Mandalorian. It's almost like the Mandalorians.
Who said that? That was me in season 1. Thank you.
Yeah.
But all right.
Yeah.
Sorry. That triggered me.
I did see a nice before we go. I did see a nice little picture about the evolution of Grogu, like through his Mandalorian armor. And of course, they had the one where he's just all decked out, just like Din Djarin, with his metal helmet with the metal ears. So it solved the question that you had asked a couple weeks ago. What does that look like for Grogu with a
Right.
helmet? So clearly, someone's interpretation of that was
Exposed ears.
very, very much exposed, but metal covered ears.
Oh.
Yes,
Okay. Well, we'll find out eventually. I'm sure he'll probably
it
just
tracks.
pin them back and taper them, and then put the helmet on. That would be my guess too. So that's an option.
Just Scotch tape around the nose type of thing. Or
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess, yeah. So anyways, Thursday, we'll be back for Mandalorian, and then we'll kick off our Star Wars celebration on Friday. So again, thanks for everybody for coming out, and we'll see you guys in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.